Chapter 318. Very well. I will go to the heavenly palace first. Shi Shinzong said softly. After that, he turned into a stream of sword light and disappeared into the horizon. The birth of the sword saint would surely shock the world. Shi Hyaming looked up with a fervent expression and mumbled to himself, 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain is finally going to rise. 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain was once the sanctum of the Swords Way in the northern wilderness region. After 10,000 years of depression, it was time to rise again. He turned to look at the disciples below with a gratified smile. These children would be the future of 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain. They traveled at full speed for 10 days. Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xianghua finally came to the seaside at the east of the northern wilderness region. The two stood on the beach and the seawater flowed over their boots. Zhou Xuanji wore a luxurious blue robe that was not wet by the seawater. He looked toward the horizon and asked, "Where is that palace?" Xian Xianghua replied, "We will reach it after walking for about 150 miles. But we have to wait for one more person." He found the palace. Zhou Xuanji was curious. Who would go to the deep sea for no reason? In the northern wilderness region, both humans and demons were deeply fearful of the deep sea. About half an hour later, a ball of demonic chi flew over from the horizon and landed before the two of them. The demonic chi dissipated and an evil-looking man appeared. He had long white hair and wore a black robe. His face was handsome, but his skin was loose and wrinkled. An evil aura emanated from his brows, and his curled lips gave off a cruel and ruthless vibe. Great tribulation scattered immortal. Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes. There were not many great tribulation scattered immortals in the world. Other than Xian Xianghua, there was no one else in the Tanhua sect. Could it be, nephew Zhou, long time no see? The black-robed man grinned. His smile was chilling. Zhou Xuanji said calmly, "Diablo, you resurrected indeed. I did not expect you to have the cultivation of a first tribulation scattered immortal." This person was the ancient Diablo, the rival of the Hegemon Sword Emperor. Diablo shook his head and said, "You should know how powerful the celestial devil rebirth technique is. If I had not died for so long, 10 years would have been enough for me to recover to second tribulation scattered immortal." Zhou Xuanji was curious suddenly. How powerful was this guy at his peak? That palace is called the Violet Demon Palace. It has existed for a long time. If I hadn't been seriously injured by Sky and thrown into the deep sea, I wouldn't have discovered its existence. Diablo said faintly. He who was heavily injured was naturally no match for the demon guarding the Violet Demon Palace. Otherwise, he could have used the 5-colored immortal fruit to boost his cultivation and even defeat the Hegemon Sword Emperor. Let's go. With the three of us working together, we can definitely defeat that demon. The Diablo looked up at Zhou Xuanji and chuckled. His expression was like a father-in-law looking at his son-in-law. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. Under his lead, Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xianghua quickly flew towards the horizon. After a while, the three of them plunged into the sea and used their spiritual power to resist the seawater. Their cultivations were very high, so they were not afraid of the pressure of the seawater. When they had dived for 100 meters, they could no longer see the light. Fortunately, they could rely on their divine senses to continue diving. A distance of 10,000 meters was not far for them. Soon, Zhou Xuanji saw a ball of faint light below. When he got closer, he realized that it was the Violet Demon Palace. All sorts of gems were embedded on the surface of the palace, which glowed brightly and illuminated the surrounding underwater space. The Violet Demon Palace was nearly 100 meters tall and was divided into 2 levels. It was majestic and imposing, and there were 2 demon statues in front of the gate. They had green faces and fangs, and they had 3 heads and 6 arms. That demon's cultivation might have surpassed Third Tribulation scattered immortals. Even if it didn't, it should have reached the pinnacle of Third Tribulation scattered immortals. We must be careful. Diablo reminded, afraid that Zhou Xuanji would underestimate the enemy. Xian Xianghua said, "It's not that serious. He can't leave the Violet Demon Palace. If he can't win, he can retreat." Zhou Xuanji heard her, and his eyes were filled with battle lust. This demon was a good opportunity to test his power. He took out Heavenly Retribution Martial Punishment and God Ghost Howl straight away and said, "I'll go first. If I can't defeat it, then you guys can attack." After that, he quickly came to the gate of the Violet Demon Palace. The Diablo looked at Xian Xianghua and asked with interest, "How powerful is this brat?" He sighed in amazement in his heart. She lived up to her name as his daughter. She had sharp eyes. He had heard that before Zhou Xuanji entered the northern wilderness top 100, Xian Xianghua had already taken a fancy to this brat. She even offered him the position of vice sect lord. I'm not sure. But he's more powerful than you anyway. Facing the Diablo, Xian Xianghua appeared cold. The Diablo was not angry but looked toward Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji kicked open the gate violently. His body turned golden and heavenly lightning coiled around him. A purple Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead. Golden invincible form, world reincarnation. In such a state he was not afraid of sneak attacks. He walked into the Violet Demon Palace. There was a faint green light that illuminated a path that led deep into the palace. The two sides were pitch black as though countless malicious ghosts were hiding inside. Ordinary people did not dare to enter at all. Amazingly, there was no seawater in the palace. It was filled with dense spiritual qi. The ancient god sword appeared above Zhou Xuanji's head. The souls of 8 powerhouses appeared like 8 black shadows. Emperor Hanlin, Saber Monarch Donghai, Demon Lord Ryuan, Emperor Canghai, Ghost Emperor Zhang Tian, Emperor Zhao, Dao Lord Shen and Lu Wuji. Emperor Zhao, Dao Lord Shen and Lu Wuji were the 3 souls that had awakened in the past 10 years. Emperor Hanlin had also awakened. But no matter how Zhou Xuanji called out to him, he did not reply as though he had no consciousness. Swoosh! An air-piercing sound came. Next, Zhou Xuanji felt that he was hit by something, and he took a few steps back involuntarily. Roar! A deep roar came from the darkness as though it came from the underworld. Zhou Xuanji used heavenly light straight away. The darkness was dispelled and he saw the demon's face. He was 9 meters tall and had a humanoid body. He wore a tattered brass armor, and his hair was as white as withered grass. His face was pale and his fangs were extremely long like daggers. His eyes had no pupils but were bloodshot and scara. His body was hunched and his claws were like that of a tiger or lion. His nails were glowing coldly. He looked at Zhou Xuanji furiously. His eyes were filled with extreme rage and hatred. Violet Demon Palace is a forbidden ground. Humans are not allowed to trespass. Kill without mercy. The white-haired demon roared and charged toward Zhou Xuanji again. He was so fast that Zhou Xuanji's eyes could not keep up with him. But he still swung his sword to the side with his instincts. Bomb! Zhou Xuanji was sent flying away. His clothes were torn at the chest, and there were 3 claw marks on his golden chest. World reincarnation could reflect spirit energy and demonic energy, but this demon did not use demonic energy and still managed to injure him. In the cultivation world, even physical cultivators would channel their spirit energy into their fists and kicks to increase their destructive power. But this demon did the opposite. However, it was not Zhou Xuanji's first time encountering such an enemy. He activated the Emperor's Wei Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha straight away. The 30-meter-tall Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha swung all of its giant swords at the white-haired demon. The white-haired demon was extremely fast, and the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha could not hit him at all. He leaped up and split into hundreds of duplicates, charging toward Zhou Xuanji from different directions. Tianxia map. The human emperor must die. He roared furiously, which shocked Zhou Xuanji. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 319. Dang. Dang. Clang. Hundreds of white-haired fiendish demons surrounded and attacked the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha, catching it off guard. Zhou Xuanji held both swords in his hands, but he could not block the white-haired demon's storm-like attacks. If this continued, he would be torn apart by the white-haired demon even if he had the invincible Vajra body. The heavenly thunder on his body had no effect on this fellow at all. This was the first time he had encountered a monster with such a terrifying body. Looks like he hasn't lost his mind yet, Zhou Xuanji thought to himself. He immediately activated Heavenly Retribution Martial Punishment and God Ghost Howl. Woo woo woo, countless cries rang out, filled with resentment, mournfulness and terror. Zhou Xuanji's body was enveloped by 2 streams of qi, half of which was blood qi and the other half was black qi. Adding on the heavenly lightning, he looked like an ancient demon god, and his aura exploded. The power of martial punishment, the power of gods and ghosts. In his eyes, the white-haired demon's speed suddenly slowed down. He immediately displayed his dual sword intense, the sky-dominating divine sword in his left hand and the cold wave sound wave in his right. The white-haired demon instantly fell into a disadvantageous position. He started to dodge, but in the end, Zhou Xuanji used universal attraction to pull him in front of him. Zhou Xuanji furiously slashed out with his 2 swords, slashing into his shoulders. No matter how strong his body was, it was still unable to block the sharpness of the intimidating spirit divine sword. The blade sank into his shoulder bone. Roar! The white-haired demon roared hoarsely. 4 arms grew out of his back and struck Zhou Xuanji away. Then 2 more heads popped out from both sides of his neck. His skin turned green, which reminded Zhou Xuanji of the 2 stone statues in front of the gate. So it was him. Outside the palace, Xian Xianghua and the evil king watched the battle through their divine senses. Both of them were shocked. They knew that Zhou Xuanji was much more powerful than before, but they did not expect him to be this powerful. Not even a first tribulation loose immortal can withstand the power of that fiendish demon. Even ordinary second tribulation loose immortals wouldn't dare to fight it head-on. The evil king swallowed his saliva and exclaimed, "Why is this kid's physical body so strong when he's only at the Mahayana realm?" But Xian Xianghua knew that Zhou Xuanji had the Qianxia map to nourish his body every day. Every month he also used natural resources to refine his body. His body had already reached an extremely horrifying state. Although he was not as good as the white-haired demon, he still had his sword techniques. She suddenly felt that Zhou Xuanji was not far away from becoming number 1 in the world. There was no need to wait for 1,000 years or even 100 years. She sighed faintly. Why did she feel that Zhou Xuanji's talent was growing? Those 2 swords of his are definitely not ordinary weapons. Could it be that he has inherited from the upper realm? Xian Xianghua nodded in response. She thought that Zhou Xuanji's legendary swords came from the Sky-Sundering Sword Emperor and the Hegemon Sword Emperor. Hegemon Jiu was an example. It was the Hegemon Sword Emperor's invincible divine weapon. At the same time, Zhou Xuanji fell into a fierce battle. The 3 heads of the white-haired fiendish demon actually possessed different mystiques. Originally, it was only his physical body that was strong. Now there were 2 more mystiques. The eyes of the left head would shoot out 2 terrifying flames that could break through the defense of the invincible Vajra body. The right head continuously shot out green light arrows from its mouth. Even world reincarnation could not reflect them. It was truly strange. This demon's name is Demon Marshal Sanhai. He has guarded Purple Demon Palace for over 100,000 years and is one of the few that can resist the Qianxia map. An ancient voice sounded in Zhou Xuanji's ears. It was Emperor Hanlin. Sound transmission. What's his weakness? Zhou Xuanji asked as he dodged. Demon Marshal Sanhai's cultivation was powerful, and his body was ridiculously powerful. His speed was so fast that it was impossible to defend against him. What was worth mentioning was that Violet Demon Palace was too sturdy. Even when they were fighting in the palace, Violet Demon Palace did not tremble at all. No weakness unless you reach 5th tribulation scattered immortal and suppress him with absolute power. Emperor Hanlin's words made Zhou Xuanji shudder. 5th tribulation scattered immortal? Even Yang Di might not reach 5th tribulation scattered immortal. Could it be that I can only retreat? Zhou Xuanji gritted his teeth and took out his glorious gold and heavenly soul legendary swords to defend against Demon Marshal Sanhai's attack. Find the Violet Demon Monarch's heart and fuse it into your body. Violet Demon Palace will recognize you as its owner, and Demon Marshal Sanhai will not harm you anymore. Emperor Hanlin continued to speak telepathically. Next, a memory entered his mind. It was the map of Violet Demon Palace. This guy came to Violet Demon Palace before? Without a word, Zhou Xuanji dashed toward the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. Why is this guy running inside? Let's go and help him. Diablo said with gritted teeth. He looked anxious. If Zhou Xuanji died, they would not be able to get the colorful celestial tree. Xian Xianghua stopped him and said, "Don't worry. If he can't win, he will run outside. Don't worry, he might already have a plan." There was a powerful restriction deep within Violet Demon Palace, which prevented their divine senses from penetrating. So, they had already tracked Zhou Xuanji's whereabouts. Diablo tried his best to calm his emotions. He wanted to see if Zhou Xuanji could defeat the demon. He heard Zhou Xuanji asking about Demon Marshal Sanhai's weakness. Who was this guy talking to? Could it be the soul in the Qianxia map? He fell into deep thought. Zhou Xuanji traveled swiftly through the corridors. From the outside, Violet Demon Palace did not look huge. But after going deeper, it looked like a city. There must be some kind of spatial restriction here. The legendary swords blocked Demon Marshal Sanhai, but they could only slow him down. They could not stop him. According to Emperor Hanlin's memory, Zhou Xuanji quickly came to a side palace and broke through the door. Billowing flames came at him, but he ignored them. After passing through the sea of flames, he finally saw the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. It was a heart that was as big as a watermelon. It levitated in a stream of silver radiance, and the meridians on its surface could be seen. Zhou Xuanji came up to the Violet Demon Monarch's heart and asked in his heart, "What should I do to it? What's the price?" He scanned it with his divine sense and sensed that there were no remnant souls, restrictions, or poison. He did not trust Emperor Hanlin completely, but he trusted his own senses. The world Buddha art allowed his senses to surpass cultivators at the same stage as him. He could even sense spirit energy, which was one of his trump cards. Place it on your chest, and the violet demon monarch's heart will merge with your heart automatically. Don't worry, this is not the heart of some powerful cultivator but a supreme treasure of creation. It was born from the fate of the world. Your physique can barely absorb it and there will be no side effects. Emperor Hanlin's voice sounded in his ears, which made him hesitate. He remembered that the sword spirit said that all the sword souls in the supreme legendary sword system would not harm him. Even though they had their own thoughts, they were already absolutely loyal to the sword master. Since that was the case, then let's give it a shot. He placed the violet demon monarch's heart on his chest. Instantly, a wave of violet radiance shone from the violet demon monarch's heart and illuminated the entire palace. Ruer, Demon Marshal Sanhai appeared at the door and leaped toward Zhou Xuanji with one step. He clawed at Zhou Xuanji. The violet demon monarch's heart quickly entered Zhou Xuanji's chest. Instantly, Demon Marshal Sanhai stopped and was less than 2 meters away from him. Zhou Xuanji felt that his chest was about to explode. It was extremely hot. A wave of energy exploded from the violet demon monarch's heart and wreaked havoc in his body, charging all his vital channels. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 320. Boom. 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 Zhou Xuanji felt the spirit energy in his body continuously explode, and the unimaginable pain caused him to half kneel on the ground. His legendary swords also fell to the ground. He supported himself with his right hand, sweating profusely. His eyes were wide open and bloodshot. His heartbeat was like a war drum ringing in his ears. Everything around him was forgotten and he fell into a trance. The purple Taiji symbol on his forehead became brighter and brighter, as if it was drawn by lines of fire. Violent Ling power came from the depths of Violet Demon Palace, causing all the halls to tremble. Demon Supremacy Sanhai's eyes shone with blood-red light as he turned around and left quickly. From the outside, the Violet Demon Palace did not seem to be shaking at all. Evil King couldn't sit still any longer. He said in a low voice, "If he doesn't go in now, his life will be in danger." Then he rushed into the Violet Demon Palace. Xian Xianghua snorted coldly and followed closely behind. She could see through Diablo at a glance. This guy was afraid that Zhou Xuanji would monopolize the colorful celestial tree. As soon as the father and daughter entered the Violet Demon Palace, they were stopped by Demon Lord Sanhai, and a great battle broke out. At the same time, Zhou Xuanji was already surrounded by spiritual qi. He was in the whirlwind, but he was still half kneeling on the ground. His cultivation was rising steadily. Not far away, the souls of 8 powerful beings hovered above the ancient god sword. At this moment, they were actually communicating. Interesting. The owner of the Tianxia map actually obtained the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. This is unprecedented. Legend has it that if one obtains the Tianxia map, they can obtain the world and become the human sovereign. However, they obtained the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. Could it be that their fates do not conflict? You guys really didn't die. Why didn't you say anything before? TSK. Lu Wuji, I didn't expect you to fall as well. I grew up listening to your legends. Emperor Hanlin? The younger generation will surpass us in time, even going through the Violet Demon Palace. Unfortunately, he's still the same as us old fellows, only leaving behind a remnant soul, struggling at death's door. These powerhouses all knew each other. Of course, it was only one-sided because they came from different eras. Zhou Xuanji did not notice their conversation. He was enduring extreme pain. Not long after, his cultivation had broken through to Mahayana level 5. The violent power was like a torrent pouring into a well. Not only did it cause his physical body to feel tormented, but even his will was being tormented. But as time passed, he began to get used to the pain. If the extreme pain lasted for a long time, people would become numb to it. His consciousness became slightly clearer. He could feel the meridians in his body being torn apart. Even his golden core and nascent soul were shattered, but they did not collapse. Fortuitous encounter. This is a great opportunity. Zhou Xuanji was pleasantly surprised in his heart. It was as though he saw a ray of sunlight after being in darkness for a long time. The excitement was indescribable. He immediately activated the World Buddha art. The speed at which he took in qi suddenly increased, but the injuries in his body were decreasing. This speed and trajectory, could it be the legendary World Buddha art? Demon Lord Ryuan exclaimed in surprise, drawing the attention of the other 7 mighty figures. World Buddha Art. The supreme beings fell silent. Tao Lord Shintian asked in astonishment, "Is the World Buddha Art very powerful?" No one answered him. They hadn't even heard of the World Buddha Art, so they couldn't be bothered with him. Of course, it wasn't necessarily because this person was weak. There could be other reasons. Time continued to pass. Xian Xianghua and Evil King were unable to defeat Demon Lord Sanhai and were eventually forced out of Violet Demon Palace. Demon Supremacy Sanhai stood at the door like a guardian, glaring at the two of them. Evil King frowned anxiously. Why didn't this guy capture Zhou Xuanji? Could he already? He asked in astonishment. Although he said that, he had another thought in his heart. Xian Xianghua snorted, maybe Xuanji has already found the colorful celestial tree. Evil King heard her and frowned even deeper. He was a little frustrated. Violet Demon Palace was a place that he discovered. How could he allow someone else to take it for himself? Even if that person was his son-in-law. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Aren't you afraid that he will take it for himself? He asked with a deep voice. That was the colorful celestial tree. Even the great ancient emperors would be moved by it. So what if he takes it for himself? He's my future husband. Everything I have belongs to him. Xian Xianghua said with a smile, which almost made Evil King vomit blood. However, he did not lose his temper but only gnashed his teeth. Xian Xianghua's eyes were filled with disdain and did not speak anymore. An hour later, Zhou Xuanji broke through to Great Realization Level 6. His pain had been reduced by half. He was exhilarated. So satisfying. Breaking through 2 stages consecutively was equivalent to 10 years of hard work. And it was not over yet. 2 hours later, he broke through to Great Realization Level 7. But the good times did not last long. The surrounding spiritual chi began to dissipate. The surging spirit energy in his body calmed down gradually. He could still hear his heartbeat, which grew louder and louder. It was like the heartbeat of the earth. It was heavy and powerful like a poem. Zhou Xuanji could move his limbs now. He sat down with his legs crossed and continued to channel his energy. He had just entered Violet Demon Palace and leveled up 3 times consecutively. This made him very excited. The pain he suffered previously was nothing to him now. He began to look forward to breaking through to Great Tribulation Scattered Immortal. At that time he would be invincible in the world. The serendipity was not over yet. There was still the colorful celestial tree deep within Violet Demon Palace. Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and focused on cultivation. Numerous purple lines appeared in his body like meridians, which made him look extremely evil. He did not pay attention to his appearance, but he could sense that his physical strength had reached an unprecedented level, which was far beyond what it was before. He even felt that his physical strength was not inferior to Demon Sovereign Sanhai's. Just this alone was enough to increase his power by leaps and bounds. Another half an hour passed. The Violet Demon Monarch's heart completely fused with him, and the violent spiritual chi in the surroundings stopped. He did not manage to break through to Great Realization Level 8, but he was not disappointed. He clenched his fist and felt a sense of power that could destroy everything. He could see that his heart had turned purple and was slightly bigger than before. The Violet Demon Monarch's heart is a supreme treasure that the demon race and demon race fought over. Now that you obtained it, this is an incredible serendipity. Congratulations. Emperor Hanlin's voice came from behind. The 8 souls levitated in a row and looked at him. He got up and looked back. May I ask if the Violet Demon Monarch's heart has any other uses other than strengthening one's physique? Zhou Xuanji asked curiously. He could sense that the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was extraordinary. Because of it, his sword master haki became many times stronger. Emperor Hanlin said ambiguously, "You need to comprehend it yourself." After that, he and the other 7 souls dispersed and entered the ancient god sword. Zhou Xuanji could not help but think. He had a feeling that the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was not simple. He planned to keep this a secret. Of course he would still tell Xian Xianghua, but he must keep it a secret from Diablo. He looked around the palace and did not find any other treasures, so he walked toward the gate of Violet Demon Palace. At the same time, Diablo was like an ant on a hot pan. His heart was burning with anxiety. It had been so long, but Zhou Xuanji had not come out yet. Don't tell me that brat swallowed all the colorful celestial fruits. Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 321. You're really not anxious? Diablo could not hold back his restlessness and asked Xian Xianghua. Xian Xianghua's eyes were indifferent and ignored him, which made him furious. Following her gaze, Demon Sovereign Sanhai was still guarding the gate. He stared at them furiously and did not move. Strange. Why is this guy guarding the gate? He was not like this before. Could he be protecting Zhou Xuanji? Xian Xianghua thought in astonishment. She was sure that Zhou Xuanji had some serendipity. But it should not be the colorful celestial tree. That treasure was connected to the spirit fountain after all. If it was uprooted, there would be a huge commotion. Of course, there was another possibility. That was, Zhou Xuanji was eating the colorful celestial fruits one after another. But with her understanding of Zhou Xuanji, he would not leave her to eat alone. Just when the two were thinking, Zhou Xuanji appeared behind Demon Sovereign Sanhai. The two opened their eyes wide. Demon Sovereign Sanhai turned around and knelt before Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. He felt that he had some kind of connection with Demon Sovereign Sanhai. It was as though he was facing his own servant. He somehow felt that Demon Sovereign Sanhai would obey him. Move aside. Don't hurt them, he instructed immediately. Demon Supremacy Sanhai immediately retreated into the darkness and disappeared. He smiled satisfactorily and turned to Xian Xianghua and Diablo. Come in, he said with a smile. It seemed that Demon Sovereign Sanhai had some special relationship with the Violet Demon Monarch heart. He could not understand this, so he could only ask Emperor Hanlin in the future. Or maybe there was an answer deep within the Violet Demon Palace. Xian Xianghua and Diablo came up to him and stepped into the palace carefully. Nephew Zhou, what's going on? Diablo asked gently, but his heart was filled with anger. This guy must have some serendipity. He could make such a powerful Demon Sovereign Sanhai submit to him. He was really jealous. If he could do the same, with Demon Sovereign Sanhai around, he would surely be unrivaled in the world. Zhou Xuanji had already prepared an excuse. He shrugged his shoulder and said with a smile, back then he was chasing after me. I hid in a side palace, but strangely, the demon did not dare to come in. I found a bead in the side palace, which looked like an eyeball. Before I could react, the bead entered my body and then this happened. Using the eyeball to represent the Violet Demon Monarch's heart, he did not believe that the Evil King would be able to guess correctly. Evil King came to a realization and his heart bled. If he had known earlier, he would have given it a try back then. This was a great opportunity. A great opportunity not inferior to the five-colored celestial spiritual tree. The more he thought about it, the more depressed he felt. However, facing Zhou Xuanji, he still had to maintain a smile of admiration. Xian Xianghua hooked her arms around Zhou Xuanji's neck and said with a charming smile, "My little husband is so awesome." She ignored the ancient Diablo beside her and began to tease Zhou Xuanji as though no one else was around. The three of them chatted for a while and walked deeper into the Violet Demon Palace. From the beginning to the end, Demon Lord Sanhai did not jump out of the darkness. When we leave, see if you can bring that demon out with you. It's a powerful force. She sighed in her heart. This brat's luck was truly heaven-defying. He felt that no matter where he went, there would be great fortuitous opportunities. Zhou Xuanji nodded, but in his heart he was not confident either. It would be bad if Demon Lord Sanhai suddenly went berserk and attacked the people around him. The three of them moved ahead quickly in search of the five-colored celestial tree. The Violet Demon Palace was bigger than they imagined. They traveled for a long time, but they still could not find the five-colored celestial tree. But they were not discouraged and continued their search patiently. They dispelled all the restrictive spell formations along the way. Above the sea of clouds, the scorching sun shone brightly. Mountain peaks emerged like reefs in the sea. The man in the woven rush raincoat sat on a mountain peak. He who was cultivating suddenly raised his head slightly. Why is there a change in the situation of the world? He mumbled to himself with a tinge of fear. Normally, the situation of the world would not change. Once there was a change, it would mean the arrival of an existence that surpassed this world. He began divining with his fingers, but he could not divine anything. At this moment, a silhouette appeared behind him. It was Dao Seeker. The situation of the world has changed. Do you feel it? Dao Seeker asked. Having heard him, the man in the woven rush raincoat got up slowly and turned to look at him. The two of them looked at each other in silence. A while later, the man in the woven rush raincoat said faintly, Dao Seeker, our plan might not change anything. We need more power. Although his tone was cold, there was a tinge of sorrow in it. Not really. What I'm asking for has nothing to do with the human race. What? You suddenly don't believe in Yangdi? Dao Seeker asked expressionlessly. There seemed to be a tinge of mockery in his eyes. The man in the woven rush raincoat did not reply but turned around with his back facing Dao Seeker. After Shi Shinzong came out, I suddenly felt that he had a greater chance. Although Yang Di was powerful, his heart was as pure as jade. It would be difficult for him to become an overlord. Sword Saint. Back then Shi Shinzong was even more outstanding than Yang Di. There were many heroes in that era, and Yang Di might not have Shi Shinzong's status in that era. No matter what, I believe in Zhou Xuanji. Take care. Dao Seeker left after saying this. Since the man in the woven rush raincoat could not see through the situation of the world, he did not bother to say more. After Dao Seeker left, the man in the woven rush raincoat did not sit down but continued to think. In the long history of the human race, who else could be compared to Shi Shinzong? Other than the great emperors Yang Zhou with the purple chi from the east, the legendary Lu Wuji? After searching for 2 hours, the three finally found the colorful celestial tree. This tree was actually under Violet Demon Palace. If not for Xian Xianghua discovering a secret door, they would not have found it. Because Violet Demon Palace had a mysterious background and was overseen by Demon Sovereign Sanhai, they could only search for it and did not dare to destroy it. This was a vast underground space where spiritual chi formed a mist. There was a small lake in front of them that was bubbling with countless bubbles. A colorful tree stood at the center of the lake. Colorful celestial tree. This tree was 15 meters tall and bore many fruits. Each fruit had 5 colors: red, purple, yellow, green, and blue. Most of them were the size of an adult's fist. Diablo's expression turned greedy and walked up quickly. Although Xian Xianghua's eyes were burning with passion, she still walked at a steady pace. Zhou Xuanji was thinking whether he could move this tree to Skyfall. Diablo plucked a colorful celestial fruit and began chewing. Shortly after, he plucked another 5 and sat down to cultivate. Xian Xianghua turned around and shouted, "Hurry up or this old thing will finish all of them." Having heard that, Diablo's mouth twitched and veins bulged on his forehead. But for some reason he did not do anything to Xian Xianghua. He was like a different person from the cruel and domineering legend. Zhou Xuanji walked to the small lake. He waved his right hand and took 100 colorful celestial fruits and placed them in the supreme storage. Diablo could not help but open his eyes and cried out, "Nephew Zhou, isn't this very rude of you?" Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and said, "If not for me, could you have come in?" There were at least 400 to 500 fruits on the colorful celestial tree. He was already giving face by taking 100 first. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 322. Zhou Xuanji did not have a good impression of the ancient Diablo, even though he treated him well. In his opinion, this old fellow definitely had something on Xian Xianghua, or perhaps he was already Xian Xianghua's puppet, which was why he had such an attitude. Facing Zhou Xuanji's question, the Diablo fell silent. Xian Xianghua smiled. With a wave of her right hand, 5 five-colored immortal spiritual fruits flew in front of her. She meditated on the ground and said, "Let's hurry. When we came here before, I found traces of other people. I'm sure we are not the only ones who discovered the existence of the Violet Demon Palace." "Others?" Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes. Anyone who could dive 10,000 meters into the sea was definitely not an ordinary person. Could they be Sunlight Emperor or Jiang Wudi's men? Or it could be a force from overseas. Without thinking too much, he grabbed a few more 5-colored immortal fruits and began cultivating. The underground space fell into silence. The 3 of them cultivated on their own, causing spiritual energy to surge. The colorful celestial fruit contained more spirit chi than Zhou Xuanji had expected. It took him 6 hours to refine a 5-colored immortal fruit. Xian Xianghua and the ancient Diablo were not any slower than him. After all, their cultivations far surpassed Zhou Xuanji's. Days passed by. 8 days later. Outside the Violet Demon Palace, a group of cultivators surrounded it. The leader was a bald man wearing heavy armor. He held a tiger-striped broadsword in his hand. His face was ferocious and full of ferocity. It really is the Violet Demon Palace. Legend has it that there is a demon venerable Sanhai in there, and his cultivation has reached the 4th tribulation scattered immortal realm. You are not allowed to enter without permission. The bald man said in a deep voice. He looked at the Violet Demon Palace and greed flashed in his eyes. The legend of the Violet Demon Palace. He had been looking forward to it for a long time. Today he had finally seen it. An elder in a robe cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, before we come up with a foolproof plan, let's not go in. After all, this place is close to the northern wilderness region. If we make too much noise, we will definitely attract trouble." The bald man nodded and laughed. The northern wilderness region should have fallen. It's such a treasure land but no one found it. How sad. Aha, I shall fulfill my wish today. His name was Duan Yogu and he came from a sea region. He came to this ocean through the void. Based on his understanding of the northern wilderness region, the current northern wilderness region was not that strong. There weren't even 50 Great Tribulation loose immortals. In the current world, only Yang Di could be considered as a big shot. The other cultivators also revealed looks of disdain. However, they also understood that the people and demons of the northern wilderness had always been in awe of the ocean. After all, there were countless savage beasts hidden in the ocean. Even they had to be cautious. After that, Duan Yogu barged into the Purple Demon Palace alone. The moment he stepped through the door, he was found by Demon Lord San Hai, and a great battle broke out. In less than the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, he returned in low spirits. He wiped off the blood stains on his face and glared at Demon Lord San Hai, who was standing in front of the gate. He scolded, "This demon's body is ridiculously strong, we can't force our way in." His subordinates were secretly shocked. They knew that Duan Yogu was a Dharma and body double cultivator, and his cultivation focused on the physical body. His strength was unparalleled in all the sea regions, but they did not expect him to be defeated so quickly. The other side. Beneath the Violet Demon Palace, Zhou Xuanji and the others could feel the ground trembling slightly above them. Xian Xianghua opened her eyes and said, "You came so quickly." She looked at Zhou Xuanji. He had already broken through to Mahayana level 8 and absorbed 25 colored immortal fruits. Diablo 832, and his cultivation improved as well. Zhou Xuanji closed his eyes and muttered, "If so, let's split the fruits. I can take less but this tree belongs to me." Having heard that, Diablo opened his eyes and looked furious. The value of the 5-colored celestial tree far exceeded that of the 5-colored celestial fruits. Why should it belong to you? Okay. Xian Xianghua agreed without hesitation, which almost made Diablo vomit blood. Adulterer and adulterer, villains and cahoots. He could only curse in his heart but did not dare to say it out. He could not win against Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xianghua in an argument, nor could he win against them in a fight. This was the only way. After that, Diablo and Xian Xianghua each took 120 fruits, while the rest belonged to Zhou Xuanji. Together with the 100 that he took at the beginning, he had the most 5-colored celestial fruits. But Xian Xianghua was biased, so Diablo could not do anything about it. Zhou Xuanji flew to the surface of the lake and uprooted the 5-colored celestial tree single-handedly. The spirit fountain gushed out, shaking the entire underground space. The spring water splashed on his body but was blocked by his spirit energy. To prevent the 5-colored celestial tree from withering quickly, he immediately stored it in the supreme storage. This scene made Diablo's heart bleed. So painful. Zhou Xuanji returned to Xian Xianghua's side and said, "You guys escaped secretly. I want to cultivate here for a while longer." His gaze was locked onto the spiritual spring, reluctant to part with it. Xian Xianghua shook her head and said, "You must leave quickly. If this matter is exposed, all powerful cultivators will target you since you have the Tianxia map and the 5-colored celestial tree." Zhou Xuanji pondered for a while and agreed to Xian Xianghua's suggestion. The three left quickly. Outside Violet Demon Palace, a group of cultivators were getting into formation. Duan Yogu stared at Demon Sovereign Sanhai and said coldly, "I don't believe that I can't destroy you. Form the Hades God-slaying formation with all your might. Summon the most powerful hell demon." His tone was impassioned as he roused the emotions of his subordinates. Everyone channeled their spirit energy and gave it their all. At this moment, a ball of demonic chi flew out from Violet Demon Palace toward the surface of the sea with extreme speed. Duan Yogu's pupils contracted. He immediately chased after it with his saber. A stream of sword chi shot out from the demonic chi. It was extremely fast, and Duan Yogu raised his saber to block it instinctively. With a loud boom he was struck down. When he stabilized himself, the demonic chi was already gone. He frowned and looked down at his hands. The webbing between his thumb and forefinger was torn and blood seeped out. It was excruciating. Such a domineering sword chi. A sword cultivator with such power in the northern wilderness region. Sword Saint Shi Shinzong. News of his resurrection spread across the northern wilderness region. There were many spies from overseas in the northern wilderness region, so Duan Yogu knew about it too. The overseas humans all originated from the northern wilderness region. The legends of the Sword Saint were passed down too. Thinking about how powerful the Sword Saint was, Duan Yogu took a deep breath and did not chase after him. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji and the other two had already flown out of the sea and toward the mainland at full speed. Hades God-slaying formation. TSK. The overseas cultivators are impressive. They can even pass down such an ancient formation. Diablo said in amazement. Xian Xianghua could not help but look at Zhou Xuanji strangely. Because Zhou Xuanji knew this sword formation too. Zhou Xuanji looked calm as though he did not see her gaze. He was thinking about Duan Yogu. This fellow was very strong. He was estimated to have the strength of a second tribulation scattered immortal. Who knew what rank he was in the overseas region? Of course Duan Yogu was no match for him. He hadn't used his full strength in the previous attack. This trip to the Violet Demon Palace had saved him dozens of years of effort. At the same time, his physical body had transformed and he had obtained the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. It was definitely a great opportunity. If he challenged Yang Di now, could he become the #1 in the world? However, he did not know that the northern wilderness region was currently in a huge uproar. Sword Saint Shi Shinzong defeated Sky, and Sky fell from the sky, smashing into an imperial city and dying on the spot. The news spread and shocked the world. The legendary Sword Saint was about to show his power. Chapter 323. When Zhou Xuanji heard about Shi Shinzong defeating Xinyuan Zhou, he had already returned to Skyfall. Along the way they did not stop, so they did not ask for information. When they got close to Skyfall, Xian Xianghua and the Diablo went their separate ways. Zhou Xuanji was very curious about what they were plotting, but that was the Tanhua sect's business, so he did not ask too much. When he returned to the peak of Skyfall, everyone crowded around him. The first to speak was Lin Chang'e, and he told them about Shi Shinzong's recent accomplishments. Ever since Tian Tian had been defeated, Shi Shinzong had gone around challenging experts. His opponents were all in the top 10 of the Desolate North's top 100, and even Jiang Wudi had been defeated by him. TSK haven't died again? Zhou Xuanji said in amazement. Ever since Xinyuan Zhou had made his debut, this fellow had repeatedly died. However, with the protection of heavenly law, this fellow would most likely come back to life. Lin Chang'e said in a low voice, "There's one more thing. Shi Shinzong has challenged you to a battle in 1 year's time. The location is Sword Emperor Canyon, where the Hegemon Sword Emperor ascended. This matter has already been announced to the world by the Shanghai Ziggurat, and everyone in the world knows about it. Jiang Shui, Chongming Demon Monarch, Beishao Wangjin, Huang Lianxin, and the rest all looked terrible. They knew that Zhou Xuanji had fought with the heavens before and had almost been killed by them. On the other hand, Shi Shinzong was able to destroy heaven by himself. Perhaps only Sunlight Emperor could compare to him in terms of power. Zhou Xuanji did not panic and said, "Spread the word that I will meet you in a year." Hearing this, the crowd widened their eyes and tried to persuade him. After all, Shi Shinzong was a legend, and Zhou Xuanji could ignore him. At most, he would be laughed at by others, but no one would doubt his strength. Daoya Old Man asked curiously, "What realm are you in now?" Everyone became silent. Could it be that Zhou Xuanji had become more powerful again? That's right, didn't he go with Xian Xianghua to look for fortuitous opportunities? It seemed that he had obtained the opportunity. Great realization level 8, Zhou Xuanji said as he smiled, causing everyone's eyes to widen. Without waiting for the crowd to speak, he told them about the Violet Demon Palace and ignored the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. He had a feeling that the origin of the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was not inferior to the Tianxia map. Jiang Shui said excitedly, "In other words, we can also improve our cultivation by leaps and bounds?" She was very smart. Her words shifted everyone's attention to the colorful celestial fruit, so they did not think about how Zhou Xuanji stopped Demon Sovereign Sanhai from attacking. Zhou Xuanji nodded and took out the colorful celestial fruits. He gave one each to Jiang Shui, Han Shenbua, Daoya Old Man, Huang Lianxin, Beishao Wangjian, Chongming Demon Monarch, the Little Black Snake, Meng Tianlang, Zhou Xiaoqi, Ning Zifeng and Lin Chang'e. Other than that, he also planned to give one each to the 4 mountain guarding kings, the 3-eyed drought rodent, Finyu Dragon King, Big and Small Air. As for the 2nd and 3rd generation disciples, he would not give them to them. After all, the 5-colored celestial fruit was rare. In the future, it could be used as a treasure of the Emperor Sword Court to attract disciples to cultivate diligently. Daoya Old Man shook his head and said, "I don't want it. After all, my cultivation has reached a bottleneck." Zhou Xuanji did not force them and allowed them to cultivate. He, Daoya Old Man, and Jiang Shui walked to the side. The 5-colored celestial tree is of great importance. Where do you think we should plant it? Zhou Xuanji asked. He wanted to plant it on the top of the mountain, but after some thought it would be too ostentatious. Daoya old man stroked his long beard and said, "Why don't we open up a cave beneath our feet and draw in the spirit spring in the mountain to nourish the five-colored celestial tree with spiritual qi?" He sighed in amazement in his heart. Why was this brat so lucky? He could get whatever serendipity he wanted. Could this brat be the legendary child of luck? The three of them acted immediately. Lin Chang'e left Skyfall and was prepared to spread the news that Zhou Xuanji accepted the challenge. Since they were going to fight, they should make it big. So what if he was a legend in the sword's way? Within 10 days, the news that Zhou Xuanji accepted the challenge spread across the world. The Sword Emperor indeed. He has guts. The most talented person in the sword's way today versus the most talented person in history? Shi Shenzong is so domineering. Can Zhou Xuanji stand up to him? It's difficult indeed. Even Tian was slain by him. The previous Tian gave the hegemon Sword Emperor and Diablo a headache. Sword Emperor Canyon, I must go. Haha, no matter who wins, I must go. This is a great opportunity. The 8 sanctums and 7 empires were all discussing this. If Zhou Xuanji defeated Shi Shenzong, he would surpass the legend and become a great emperor for sure. If Shi Shenzong defeated Zhou Xuanji, his next target would be Yang Di, and he would become the top cultivator in the world. Most people thought that Shi Shenzong would win. After all, even Tian was killed by him. However, Zhou Xuanji was already a legend in the world. All kinds of achievements were spread across the northern wilderness region, and he had won over countless believers. Soon a war of words broke out. Great Shang Chaoge Royal City. Yang Xindi gathered all the officials in the court. They were discussing the battle at Sword Emperor Canyon. They wanted to support Zhou Xuanji. If Zhou Xuanji's life was in danger, they could stand up for him. This emperor feels that only the Sword Emperor deserves to be the top cultivator in the world. If he dies, it will be a misfortune for the human race. He has done so many good deeds over the past few decades, and he has never asked for anything in return. This emperor cannot let him fight alone, Yang Xindi said with a deep voice. He was only one word away from Yang Di, but their power was worlds apart. However, his boldness was not inferior to Yang Di's. Zhou Xuanji had the Tianxia map, and he was the target of everyone in the northern wilderness region. He dared to step forward, and this earned the admiration of the officials. However, they also had their own concerns. Yang Zhongtian stepped out and said, "I'm afraid that even if all of our experts come, it will be difficult to stop Shi Shenzong from killing him." Although this sentence was a slap in the face, it was the truth. Yang Xindi nodded and did not fly into a rage out of humiliation. Instead he said, "Let's ask Great Zhou and Great Qin for help. This is also an opportunity. Tell them that if Emperor Sword Court really becomes a holy land in the future, it can also protect us. However, if Sword Saint leads 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain to become a holy land, he will not protect us. With Shi Shenzong's leadership, the 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain would definitely become a holy land." The civil and military officials nodded and began to discuss how to persuade the two dynasties. Meanwhile, Great Zhou and Great Qin were also discussing this matter. The two dynasties all had the same idea, wanting to unite the three dynasties' power. Within the vast desert, the black-clothed Shi Shenzong slowly walked through the sandstorm. He had a treasured sword at his waist. His face was expressionless and his eyes were sharp as he stared straight ahead. Suddenly, a burst of laughter came from the front. A few hundred meters away there was a wooden hut. Dozens of women were singing and dancing. Baihao Yisin was lying on a wooden bed, and beautiful women were lying beside him. All of them were charming, which made him feel extremely happy. Suddenly he saw Shi Shenzong's silhouette and frowned. His heart trembled violently. Such a sharp aura, he had a bad premonition. "What's the matter, sir?" he asked loudly. Ever since he encountered Zhou Xuanji, his luck had been bad. It was as though he had run into evil spirits. He had self-destructed a few times and was about to collapse. "Great Emperor Heartless, let's see who's stronger today." Shi Shenzong's voice came and his tone was cold. "Baihao Yisin. Come. Wonderful book house." Chapter 324. Baihao Yisin stood up from the pile of beauties and sighed. His body blurred and he appeared 30 meters away from Shi Shenzong. "Must we fight? Can this emperor admit defeat?" His expression was unsightly as he said faintly. Right now he only had the power of a first tribulation scattered celestial. How could he be a match for Shi Shenzong? Even though he didn't know who Shi Shenzong was, he knew that this person was very powerful. He was too lazy to ask. He just wanted to let it go. I've always wanted to experience the power of a great sovereign. Even if you've reincarnated, you should still have the power of a great sovereign. Let's fight in the sky lest we implicate the innocent. Shi Shenzong said calmly, causing Bai Hao Yisan to narrow his eyes. So, do all of you think I'm a sick cat? To think that back then this emperor suppressed the ancestors of your ancestors. The more Bai Hao Yisan thought about it, the more annoyed he became. He leaped up and flew 100,000 feet into the sky. Shi Shenzong leapt up as well. As he flew up, he drew his sword. Today I'll show you what this emperor is capable of. Bai Hao Yisan's lips curled up into a condescending smile. Immediately after, he shook his arms and self-destructed. There was a loud bang. He turned into a bright sun that gave off a resplendent light. Shi Shenzong, who was quickly rising into the air, was unable to dodge in time. His eyes widened as his body was inundated by the light. On Skyfall, a training ground had been built halfway up the mountain. Thousands of third-generation disciples were practicing the 100-star sky-covering formation. Zhou Xuanji stood on the cliff and looked down at them. His face was expressionless, and it was hard to tell whether he was happy or worried. Qin Bantian suddenly appeared behind him and asked excitedly, "Court Lord, I heard that you brought back a special fruit. Where is mine?" Previously he was training nearby and fighting demons, so he missed the time for Zhou Xuanji to split the fruits. Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and said, "Didn't you say that the 10,000-year prince is invincible? Why do you need the colorful celestial fruit?" Qin Bantian panicked. He immediately slapped his own mouth, his face full of regret. "Court Master, I was wrong." Qin Bantian said sincerely, but it was a pity that Zhou Xuanji was unmoved. "How about this? If you can take one of my palm strikes, I'll give it to you. I won't use any spiritual energy," Zhou Xuanji said as he smiled. Hearing this, Qin Bantian immediately felt quite nervous. He knew that Zhou Xuanji was a body cultivator. However, after thinking about it carefully, he realized that he was no longer who he was in the past. He might not even be able to withstand a single palm strike, right? He gritted his teeth and said, "We agreed that it would only be one palm. You can't use spiritual power." After that, he channeled the spirit energy in his body and faced Zhou Xuanji nervously. Zhou Xuanji smiled slightly and took a step towards him. He struck out with his right palm, which was as fast as lightning, and landed on his chest. Bang! Qin Bantian's eyes could not keep up with Zhou Xuanji's hand speed at all, and he felt as if he had been hit by a massive mountain. He coughed up blood as he flew back, and in the blink of an eye, he leapt over the cliff and fell into the sea of clouds. Zhou Xuanji was not afraid that something would happen to him. After all, the forest below was dense, and adding on his cultivation, he would not fall to his death. It was a good opportunity to suppress him. This brat had become more and more arrogant in recent years. If this continued, he would develop a conceited personality. Seeing Qin Bantian being knocked down the mountain by Zhou Xuanji, many disciples on the training ground were given a big fright. Marshal Uncle Chen was sent flying by the patriarch. He must have offended the patriarch. That's right, he's too proud and condescending. Aha, serves him right. How powerful do you think the patriarch is now? A year later he will fight with the sword saint. Who will win? The patriarch will surely win. The disciples whispered to each other as they trained. Ning Zifeng, who was standing at the front, cried out coldly, "Whoever gets distracted again, I will punish him to walk up and down the mountain 100 times. The disciples heard him and shuddered in their hearts. No one dared to whisper to each other anymore. They looked up again, but Zhou Xuanji was no longer there. In the next period of time, many cultivators at the border of the northern wilderness region headed toward the Sword Emperor Canyon. The northern wilderness region was vast after all. Many people spent years and still could not traverse it. Ordinary people could easily die on the way. Zhou Xuanji was not in a hurry. To him, Skyfall was not far from the Sword Emperor Canyon. With his speed he could reach there in half a month. He continued to cultivate to get used to his body after merging with the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. And so, Finyu Dragon King Lin Chang'e and Ning Zifeng became his training targets. The demon and the human were in a miserable state. Zhou Xuanji could catch them off guard without using any sword techniques. Universal Attraction could suck them toward Zhou Xuanji and then attack them with punches and kicks. It was very uncomfortable for them, as though they could not withstand even one punch. Half a year later, Zhou Xuanji broke through to Great Realization Level 9 with the help of the colorful celestial fruits. If he consumed all of them, he could break through to Level 10. But he did not do so because he wanted to help others. To him, the difference of one stage was not a big deal. If he could break through to great tribulation scattered immortal directly, it would be a different story. With the colorful celestial fruits, most of his trusted followers broke through one stage, while those at the great realization stage could break through one or two stages. The spirit energy they needed to break through was far less than Zhou Xuanji's. According to Zhou Xuanji's estimation, he needed 10 times more spirit energy to break through at the same stage. This process could make his foundation more solid. This day, Jiang Shui broke through to astral projection level 7. She had already eaten 5 colorful celestial fruits, and no one dared to object. There were dozens of colorful celestial fruits in the supreme storage, but Zhou Xuanji did not reveal them. The two sat in the secret cave. There was a small lake in front of them, and the colorful celestial tree stood at the center. All sorts of gems were embedded on the walls, illuminating the secret cave. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and said with a smile, "At this rate, you can break through to spirit refinement in a few years." He was shocked in his heart. Jiang Shui absorbed the colorful celestial fruits faster than Zhongming Demon Monarch, Huang Lianxin, Beishao Wangjian and Han Shenbua. Of course, she was still inferior to the two 10,000-year princes. Having heard that, Jiang Shui opened her eyes and stuck out her tongue. "It's all because you favor me. Or else how could I break through so quickly?" The two of them had been together since they were young. She did not reject the colorful celestial fruits. She could only protect herself after she became more powerful, and Zhou Xuanji could do other things more freely. Zhou Xuanji said with a smile, "Come, read the fortunes of the others. Let's see what you can divine with your improved cultivation." Jiang Shui immediately closed her eyes and began divining with her fingers. She did not try to divine Zhou Xuanji, Meng Tianlang or Qin Bantian because she had tried, but it was useless. This time she chose Chongming Demon Monarch. After a while, she frowned and opened her eyes saying, "Why can't I even divine the old bull?" Daoya Old Man once said that there were two outcomes that could not be predicted. The first was that the opponent was much stronger than him, and the second was that the opponent was about to die. The difference between her and Chongming Demon Monarch was not huge. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji chuckled, "Looks like he's going to die." His tone was relaxed because he did not believe in fate. Knowing the future meant that one could change it. Jiang Shui refused to believe it and began to deduce other people. She was shocked to find that she could no longer predict the future of the people she had predicted before. She panicked and quickly brought Zhou Xuanji to find Daoya Old Man. Come. Wonderful bookstore. Com. Chapter 325. After hearing Jiang Shui's words, Daoya Old Man fell into deep thought. Your cultivation base has already increased by leaps and bounds. You shouldn't be unable to divine it. There is only one possibility. The future has changed and they are all going to die. He said in a deep voice, and his expression was a little ugly. After all, they had been relying on each other for decades. Didn't this mean that there was an extremely powerful existence that wanted to kill them all? Thinking of this, he also began to calculate. The next moment, puff, Daoya Old Man spat out a mouthful of blood, which splattered on the ground. This attracted the attention of Beishao Wangjian and Huang Lianxin, who were practicing their swordsmanship not far away. Jiang Shui quickly supported him so that he didn't fall down. Zhou Xuanji was speechless and asked, "Old Man, can you do it or not? I feel that your divination ability is getting weaker and weaker." He had never seen Jiang Shui vomit blood, but Daoya Old Man would vomit blood from time to time. It's over, the death calamity enveloped us. I knew that we would all die, but I didn't expect that the ending would not change. Except for you, we might all die. Daoya Old Man smiled bitterly. It was a sad feeling of, man proposes but God disposes. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes. Could it be that someone would attack Skyfall while he was challenging the Sword Saint? He thought of his enemies. Sunlight Emperor. Oh my God. Baihao Yisun. There were also countless experts coveting the Tianxia map. It was indeed possible. He frowned. Could it be that he was going to bring his trusted aides to the Sword Emperor Canyon? If that was the case, who would guard Skyfall? Daoya Old Man sat up straight and began to heal himself. Jiang Shui comforted him. Xuanji, don't think too much. It might not be now. It might be after you ascend. Zhou Xuanji's cultivation speed was simply too fast. Even though he had said that he wanted everyone to ascend together, everyone knew that Zhou Xuanji would most likely ascend before them. He could not allow them to delay Zhou Xuanji for thousands of years or even longer. Zhou Xuanji heard him and felt that it made sense. However, he was still a little worried. Do you want me to get Xian Xianghua to come back and protect you for a while? Zhou Xuanji asked, But where could he find Xian Xianghua? Daoya old man shook his head and said, I just calculated it again. We will still be here in 3 years, but the future that cannot be calculated is 100 years later. Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji felt at ease. 100 years. It seemed like he had to urge everyone to cultivate well. In the blink of an eye, Zhou Xuanji welcomed his 54th birthday. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 54 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner has obtained Gold, Silent Observation Sword, Tri-Sun Blazing Chi Robe. That's it. Zhou Xuanji, who was teaching Qin Bantian, frowned. Just a gold-ranked divine sword and a robe? This was the worst luck he had had in 20 years. The Tri-Sun Blazing Chi Robe is not bad. It's hard for anyone below the Great Tribulation loose immortal realm to damage it. Even if it's damaged, it can recover rapidly. The sword spirit's voice resounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind. It seemed to have sensed Zhou Xuanji's disdain. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji immediately returned to his wooden hut and prepared to try it out. After Qin Bantian saw him leave, he scratched his head awkwardly. He thought that he had done something wrong and made him angry. After a while, Zhou Xuanji walked out of the wooden hut. Qin Bantian glanced over and his eyes widened in shock. Zhou Xuanji was wearing a white robe with many flame patterns on it. His shoulders and back each had a crimson sun imprinted on them, and within each sun was a fiery bird. They looked so lifelike as if they could fly out at any moment. After wearing the Tri-Sun Blazing Chi robe, he looked even more majestic. Moreover, he was wearing the Tyrant Emperor ring, which made Qin Bantian feel like a god was walking toward him. Zhou Xuanji was pleased with Qin Bantian's expression. He looked toward the horizon and muttered, "It's time to depart." The battle at Sword Emperor Canyon would be an opportunity for him to soar. Of course it could also plummet. But he was confident. That evening, Zhou Xuanji rode on Zhou Xiaoqi and left. The others stayed behind to guard Skyfall. Zhou Xiaoqi was a fire qilin after all. Now that it was 6 meters tall, it looked mighty and domineering. Using it as a mount naturally made it look cool. The little black snake came along with him. Zhou Xuanji did not want to bring it along, but he could not resist its coaxing and pestering. It was only a meter long and coiled on Zhou Xiaoqi's head, so it was easy to overlook it. "Master, I think we must be on the right track for this battle. We will only appear when everyone thinks that you are afraid to fight," the little black snake suggested. Its cultivation had already reached 6th rank and could transform into a human form, but it still preferred its current form. Its nimble movements could lower the enemy's guard. "We'll see when the time comes," Zhou Xuanji said calmly. He looked into the distance. The horizon under the dusk looked like it was on fire. It was a poignant scene with a murderous aura. Sword Emperor Canyon. It was located in the north of the central region of the Northern Wilderness region. The surrounding 10,000 miles were undulating wastelands. Countless canyons crisscrossed the land, looking like the cracked skin of the land. The Sword Emperor Canyon was dozens of meters wide and unfathomably deep. On both sides of the canyon stood a stone sword that was hundreds of meters long, looking extremely domineering. Legend had it that before the hegemon Sword Emperor ascended, he had an epiphany. With one slash, he created a canyon that was tens of thousands of meters long and unfathomably deep. It was the Sword Emperor Canyon. The stone swords on both sides were not created by the hegemon Sword Emperor but by the hegemon sword sect to commemorate this. After 10,000 years, the Sword Emperor Canyon had become an extremely famous place in the Northern Wilderness region. Cultivators often came to watch and admire the glory of a great emperor. Currently, there were already tens of thousands of cultivators cultivating on both sides of the Sword Emperor Canyon. They came from different factions and were all here to watch the battle between the Sword Emperor and the Sword Saint. Looking behind them, there were people rushing towards the Sword Emperor Canyon from all directions. Some walked on foot, some rode on their enchanted artifacts and some rode on their mounts. It was a majestic scene. Great Zhou's carriages had also arrived. Zhou Qingxin sat on his horse and looked ahead as he said in amazement, "In this world there are not many heroes with such prestige." There was still a month before the final battle, and yet so many people had already arrived. It was difficult to imagine how many people would be watching the battle. Princess Xuanya sat on a banana leaf and levitated in the air, keeping pace with Zhou Qingxin. She asked curiously, "Imperial brother, do you think Xuanji can defeat the Sword Saint?" Because of the Sword Monarch of Great Zhou, the people of Great Zhou had heard of the legend of the Sword Saint since young. The teacher of a great emperor, the most amazing genius in the way of the sword, and so on. All sorts of titles fell on Shi Shinzong's head, and they were no less than the hegemon sword emperors. In fact, he was even more legendary. Shi Shenzong's death was due to him committing suicide. As for the reason, no one knew. I'm not sure. After all, the Sword Saint is an ancient expert who could kill Tian. However, as long as Xuanji performs well, even if he loses, it will increase his fame. After all, he is not even 100 years old, while the Sword Saint cultivated for 10,000 years before he died, Zhou Qingxin said. He spoke conservatively. No matter how talented Zhou Xuanji was, it would be very difficult for him to defeat Shi Shenzong. Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 326. Hearing that Zhou Qingxin was not sure if Zhou Xuanji could win, Princess Xuanya curled her lip. She really hoped that Zhou Xuanji could win. No matter what, Zhou Xuanji was her younger brother and Great Zhou's greatest pride. Because of Zhou Xuanji, this generation of Great Zhou felt an unprecedented pride. They felt that Great Zhou was the most powerful Great Zhou, including her. If Zhou Xuanji lost to the Sword Saint, she would be disappointed. After a while, Great Zhou's carriages stopped 1,000 meters away from Sword Emperor Canyon, far away from the crowd. Seeing Great Zhou's military flag, many cultivators began discussing and pointing at it. However, Great Zhou was not the first empire to arrive. The Hunyuan Empire had arrived long ago. There were hundreds of soldiers with powerful cultivations. They had already set up tents. Divine General Tang, one of the 4 divine generals, was looking at a map in his tent. Those who did not know would think that they were going to war. Divine General Tang placed his hands on his waist and frowned. His tower-like figure gave off an immense pressure. No one spoke in the tent. Shi Shenzong chose to fight at Sword Emperor Canyon. It's definitely not that simple. Back then, the hegemon Sword Emperor had an epiphany here too. There must be some unknown secrets in Sword Emperor Canyon. You must survey the surrounding terrain for me. When the Sword Emperor and Sword Saint fight, there will surely be a heavenly phenomenon. Divine General Tang said with a deep voice. His eyes were filled with anticipation. Ever since Yang Di wanted to establish the Great Fate Empire, the Hunyuan Empire had been ridiculed. After all, the Hunyuan Empire's goal had always been to establish the Great Fate Empire. If Yang Di beat them to it, their bragging for thousands of years would become a slap in the face. Yes. The soldiers replied in unison. Not only the Hunyuan Empire, but the other factions also had their own goals. This decisive battle became complicated and confusing. Above the white clouds, Dao Seeker flew on the clouds with his hands behind his back. His expression was calm. Come out. You have been following me for so long, he said suddenly. After a while, a figure appeared beside him. It was Feng Qiu. Feng Qiu looked at Dao Seeker with a complicated expression and said with gritted teeth, Who are you? Why are you investigating Zhou Xuanji? Ever since Zhou Xuanji obtained the Tianxia map, he had been paying close attention to Zhou Xuanji. But he realized that there were others investigating Dao Seeker as well. One of them was even more powerful than him. It had not been easy for him to track Qiu Dao. He did not know how strong this person was, so he could only tail him. Dao Seeker glanced at him and said unhurriedly, You and I are on the same path. It's a pity that your divine abilities are inferior to mine. I advise you to give up on your delusions about Zhou Xuanji. He's already mine. If you want to participate in this game, you can find someone else. Hearing this, Feng Qiu felt incredibly angry. I was the one who discovered the Tianxia map, and I was the one who set up a trap to lure others to take the Tianxia map. In other words, I nurtured Zhou Xuanji, and an expert like you likes to steal the fruits of others' labor? Can't we cultivators talk about reason? He did not continue speaking. He was also afraid of angering Dao Seeker. You're wrong. You don't understand Zhou Xuanji at all. His greatest reliance is not the Tianxia map, Dao Seeker said as he shook his head. His tone changed and said coldly, If I see you scheming against Zhou Xuanji again, don't blame me for not holding back. Feng Qiu was so angry that his entire body trembled, but he didn't dare to say anything. He already felt a wave of killing intent. He had never encountered such a killing intent before. It made him break out in a cold sweat and his primordial spirit tremble. Finally he flicked his sleeves and left. Dao Seeker mumbled, Mortals must abandon everything if they want to pursue their destiny. You are still far from that. He turned around and continued walking. His destination was Sword Emperor Canyon. Sun Hill. In a courtyard, Yang Di was practicing calligraphy. A child stood beside him. It was Fu Hao, who Lin Chang'e was wary of. Fu Hao was the only person who could follow Yang Di. Because he had never fought, he was not listed in the Northern Wilderness Top 100. Great Emperor, aren't you going to take a look at the battle at Sword Emperor Canyon? Fu Hao asked. He flew up slowly until he was 1 meter above the ground. He wanted to see what Yang Di was writing. There was only one word on the scroll. What? Yang Di looked straight ahead and said, "What's there to see? No matter who wins, they will challenge this emperor." Fu Hao nodded and said, "No one is a match for the great emperor." He rolled his eyes and cupped his fists, saying, "Why don't you let me take a look?" Shi Shenzong and Zhou Xuanji were not simple. One was the teacher of a great emperor, and the other was the most talented cultivator in history. The battle between the two would definitely be exciting. Yang Di replied softly. Sunlight Emperor replied softly. Hearing this, Fu Hao immediately bowed and left. After Fu Hao left, Yang Di looked up. He glanced at the direction in which Fu Hao left and muttered to himself, "Can't hold it in anymore?" The corners of his mouth curled up into a strange smile. The day of the final battle arrived soon. Hundreds of thousands of people had already gathered at Sword Emperor Canyon. Looking down from the sky, the ground was filled with people. In a corner in the north, a man was surrounded by dozens of women, which attracted many people's attention. It was Bai Hao Yisan. He was lying on a makeshift bed and enjoying the touch of beauties. Although he looked satisfied, his face was pale and bloodless. Especially those dark circles under his eyes, which made people feel as if his body had been hollowed out. After that self-explosion, he spent half a year to reform his body. The only thing that comforted him was that the beauties were still around. Compared to those women, they were more conscientious. Maybe the Sword Saint can't come, Bai Hao Yisan grinned. During this period of time, he had been bad-mouthing Shi Shenzong and cursing him. Because he had already guessed that the kid from half a year ago was Shi Shenzong. At this moment, a massive aura descended and covered the ground. All the noise quieted down. Everyone looked up and saw Shi Shenzong, who was dressed in black, levitating in the air and looking down at the ground. His face was cold and stern and his eyes were sharp. He was like a high and mighty god, which made people revere him. He seemed to be looking for Zhou Xuanji. After that, under everyone's gazes, he slowly landed on a stone sword that was 300 meters tall and sat down cross-legged. When he sat down, the hundreds of thousands of people became excited. Is he the Sword Saint? So domineering. That aura just now. It's the first time I felt such a powerful aura. I heard that he's the person closest to the great emperor. He's even more domineering than I imagined. I feel that Zhou Xuanji will lose. It's normal for him to lose. The key is how long Zhou Xuanji can last. I can finally witness the Sword Saint's glory. I feel that even my sword is trembling. All sorts of discussion sounded out. Everyone was convinced by the Sword Saint's spirit. Even Great Zhou's side had to admit that Shi Shenzong fulfilled all the requirements of an invincible cultivator in their hearts. Just by sitting there, he made them revere him as if they were looking at a great mountain. Far away, Fu Hao sat on a giant rock and swung his feet. Such a great Sword Saint. He has already stepped into the ascension stage and can ascend at any time, he said in amazement. Everyone's ascension stage was different. The earliest was the Emperor, who could ascend at the Great Realization stage. Normally speaking, one could ascend after reaching Second Tribulation Scattered Immortal. And Shi Shenzong's cultivation was higher than Second Tribulation Scattered Immortal. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 327. After Shi Shenzong descended, the atmosphere around Sword Emperor Canyon became quite lively. Hundreds of thousands of people were shaken by Shi Shenzong's boldness, and they were quite curious about how powerful he was. With their current senses, they felt that no one could defeat this Sword Saint. Time continued to pass. More and more people arrived. In less than 3 days, the number of cultivators present exceeded 1 million. Princess Xuanya stood on a banana leaf and looked around as she said in amazement, "So many people. And they were not ordinary people. If it was her, facing so many cultivators, she would not dare to act." Zhou Qingxin also felt quite amazed. The Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji's rallying power was simply too great. Before, Shi Shenzong had challenged other powerful cultivators, but he did not have such a great commotion. At that moment, Yang Xindi and Great Chen's emperor walked over, surrounded by their own subordinates. Seeing them, Zhou Qingxin hurriedly got up and went to greet them. The three emperors had already formed an alliance through letters, and after Zhou Qingxin invited them into the tent, they started to chat. The topic was naturally Zhou Xuanji. 20 years have passed and Zhou Xuanji is definitely not the same as before. "Everyone, don't worry too much," Zhou Qingxin said as he lightly swirled his wine cup. Zhou Xuanji's most terrifying aspect was his talent in the way of the sword and cultivation. It had been so many years since he became the world's second, and no one could imagine how powerful he was now. However, Shi Shinzong was too godly. In the hearts of the northern wilderness people, he was synonymous with invincibility. Even if he died, he would die at their hands. Yang Xindi nodded and said, "The Sword Emperor's talent is undeniable, but he's too young. In time he will definitely surpass Shi Shinzong. If he encounters any trouble, our three empires can help him." Even though the three empires did not have top-tier experts, they had their foundations. If they all went up together, it would not be too difficult to save Zhou Xuanji. After all, the Sword Saint cared about his reputation. If he killed the most talented member of the younger generation, would he not be afraid of being condemned by others? Great Chen's emperor nodded. He did not want Zhou Xuanji to die the most. His son still needed Zhou Xuanji's guidance. The three emperors started to discuss the rescue plan. In the blink of an eye, another 10 days passed. There were more than 2 million cultivators gathered around Sword Emperor Canyon. At a glance, the ground was filled with people. There were also many mighty-looking mounts and demon pets. Most people would occasionally glance at Shi Shinzong, who was standing on the stone sword. Shi Shinzong sat there, his treasured sword resting on his legs. He waited patiently, not even batting an eyelid. The Hegemon Sword Sect and the 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain sent many cultivators to observe. The two factions were not too far away from each other, and they often had conflicts with each other. However, because Shi Shinzong was present, they did not fight. "Sect Master, the Sword Emperor wouldn't dare to come, right?" A disciple of the Hegemon Sword Sect asked carefully. The Hegemon Sword Sect Master glared at him and scolded, "Shut up." Lin Chang'e had already become Zhou Xuanji's disciple, and if Zhou Xuanji was humiliated, Lin Chang'e would also be humiliated. As his father, he would also lose face. As such, no matter how much he disliked Zhou Xuanji, he had to support Zhou Xuanji. The Hegemon Sword Sect Master turned to look at Shi Haiming in the distance and could not help but grit his teeth. In the past, when he faced Shi Haiming, he always held his head high. Ever since Shi Shinzong had revived, their attitudes had been completely reversed. Feeling his gaze, Shi Haiming glanced back at him disdainfully. He was so angry that he almost rushed over. It was not just them. The other cultivators who had come to observe also felt quite annoyed. If Zhou Xuanji was afraid to fight, wouldn't they have come for nothing? Could it be that the Sword Emperor doesn't dare to come? If I was him, I wouldn't dare to come either. Impossible. He said that he would come to fight. Can't he go back on his word? Isn't Zhou Xuanji said to be fearless? Despicable, I've been waiting here for half a year. The cultivators all whispered among themselves. Because there were so many people, the heavens and earth were filled with noise. At that moment, Shi Shinzong suddenly opened his eyes and looked in a direction. Baihao Yisin, who had been enjoying the gentleness of a beauty, sat up and looked over with narrowed eyes as he muttered, "This boy's growth speed is a bit ridiculous." The beauties around him looked at each other, not knowing what he was talking about. A legend of the way of the sword. Now that I've seen you, you're indeed extraordinary. It's a pity that you're going to be defeated by my sword. Zhou Xuanji's heroic laughter suddenly sounded throughout the sky, causing the 2 million cultivators to feel incredibly excited. He's here. Was finally here. Zhou Qingxin, Yang Xindi, the Emperor of Great Qin, Princess Xuanya, the Hegemon Sword Sect Master, Shi Haiming, and the others all stood up and waited in anticipation. A ball of fire appeared on the horizon at an extremely fast speed. When the flame came close, everyone stared at it and their eyes widened. What a divine fire Qilin! Zhou Xuanji stood on Zhou Xiaoqi's back and crossed his arms in front of his chest. He smiled and his tri-sun flame qi robe danced in the wind. His black hair danced recklessly, and his eyes were wild and arrogant, looking down on the world. The cultivators were shocked to find that Zhou Xuanji's aura was not any weaker than Shi Shinzong's. Both of them had an aura of invincibility. Zhou Qingxin, Yang Xindi, Princess Xuanya, and the others felt incredibly dazed. They had not seen Zhou Xuanji in a long time, and they felt as if everything was unreal. Was this guy already this strong? The Hegemon Sword Sect Lord looked at Zhou Xuanji with a complicated gaze. He had to admit that Zhou Xuanji had already surpassed him. Even before they fought, he knew that he was not a match for Zhou Xuanji. No wonder my son worshipped him as his master. How brilliant. Thinking about that, he felt quite pleased. Now he and Zhou Xuanji could be considered allies. As long as they were not enemies, the stronger Zhou Xuanji was, the better. Zhou Xuanji leapt up and landed on another 300-meter-tall stone sword, and he looked at Shi Shinzong. Zhou Xiaoqi flew far away to avoid being accidentally injured. The Sword Saint and Sword Emperor looked at each other, 300 meters apart. The clash of their gazes caused everyone to fall silent and hold their breaths. A historical legend against a current legend. Before the two of them had even fought, all of the spectators felt their blood boiling. "You're not bad." A look of approval appeared in Shi Shinzong's eyes as he said softly. However, his voice traveled clearly into everyone's ears. Zhou Xuanji smirked and gave a confident smile as he said, "Shi Shinzong, you're not bad either. However, I'm going to become the Sword Emperor, the most powerful Sword Emperor since ancient times. I want people in the future to only think of me when they mention the Sword Emperor and not anyone else. As such, losing to me is not a humiliation for you." Arrogant. Everyone felt worried for him. Not only had this fellow humiliated Shi Shinzong, but he was also going to trample on the 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword? Was he not afraid of losing? Shi Shinzong suddenly laughed loudly. His laughter was very cold, but it did not contain any killing intent. "Looking at you reminds me of myself in the past. However, your cultivation is too weak and is only at Great Realization level 9. No matter how powerful your cultivation in the Way of the Sword is, you will not be a match for me." After laughing, he said calmly. However, these words caused the spectators' expressions to change. The Sword Emperor had already reached Great Realization level 9? Heavens! Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 328. Clang. Shi Shinzong drew his sword. His sword was 3 fingers wide and its blade was slightly black. The 2 sides of the blade were silver and it was incredibly sharp. Many strange black words were engraved on it, giving off a heavy sense of history. As soon as this sword appeared, the temperature in the heavens and the earth fell by many degrees. A gust of cold wind swept out, causing all of the spectators to shiver. "This sword is called the Divine Way, a saint among swords," Shi Shinzong said coldly. When swordsmen fought, they naturally had to introduce their swords first. The Divine Way was ranked extremely high in the Northern Wilderness sword records, and it was even higher than some Sword Emperor's swords. The Hegemon Sword Emperor's Hegemon Jiao was below it. The spectating sword cultivators all looked on with desire, and some people's breathing became ragged, looking fervent. Zhou Xuanji flipped his right hand and took out Heavenly Retribution Martial Punishment as he said, "This is Heavenly Retribution Martial Punishment, a sword of the heavenly law." Following this, he flipped his left hand and took out God Ghost Howl. This sword is called God Ghost Howl, a ghost sword that can make immortals and gods howl. He continued to take out other legendary swords, which floated behind him. This sword is called Ancient God Sword. This sword is called Sky Extinguishing Sword. This sword is called Great Heavenly Dark Jade Sword. This sword is called White Dragonbone Sword. All of the legendary swords above gold grade were taken out by him. They appeared out of thin air one after another and floated behind him. Everyone fell silent and stared at him taking out legendary swords one after another. Those who admired Zhou Xuanji became incredibly excited. The Sword Emperor was so domineering. Just in terms of introducing swords, he had already surpassed Shi Shinzong. At least with these words, Zhou Xuanji sounded more imposing. After Zhou Xuanji spoke, he did not wait for Shi Shinzong to speak and directly activated Sword Master Haki. In that moment, all of the cultivators' swords in the surrounding 100 kilometers started to violently tremble. "This is my sword? What's going on? Why can't I control my sword? Could it be the Sword Emperor and the Sword Saint? 10,000 swords resonating, such a realm in the Way of the Sword." The cultivators exclaimed one after another. 70 to 80% of the cultivators carried a sword. Not all of them were sword cultivators, but many spells could be performed with a sword. Moreover, the sword had the air of a gentleman, so very few people would hate it. "In front of me all swords bow down. If I don't become the sword sovereign, who will?" Zhou Xuanji said as he proudly laughed. As he spoke, all of the cultivators' swords flew out of their sheaths and shot towards Shi Shinzong. Shi Shinzong narrowed his eyes and did not attack. This was because the swords stopped very quickly. They were dozens of meters away from him, arranged in all directions, with the tips of the swords pointed at him. Everyone was shocked. In their eyes, Shi Shinzong was surrounded by hundreds of thousands of swords. It was a majestic scene. The sect master of the Hegemon Sword sect and Shi Hyaming had ugly expressions on their faces. Their swords also flew out of their control. The disciples of the 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain were extremely embarrassed. Their swords were actually pointed at their ancestor. This was simply disgraceful. This kid, Bai Hao Yisan stood up with a serious expression. If he was not wrong, this was a type of divine art. The ability to summon swords. He inexplicably thought of someone and fear flashed in his eyes. Shi Shinzong's expression became unprecedentedly serious. He looked at Zhou Xuanji and said word by word, "Zhou Xuanji, I acknowledge you as the sword sovereign. You are qualified to be my opponent." As he spoke, he swung his sword with his right hand and sword chi swept out. Hundreds of thousands of swords were sent flying back to their owners. Such a method was not inferior to Zhou Xuanji's. The cultivators all leapt up to catch the swords. They had a mental connection with their swords, so they naturally would not be mistaken. Now, everyone began to look forward to the fight. Zhou Xuanji did not seem to be any weaker than Shi Shinzong. The two of them looked at each other and leapt up at the same time. In that instant, the two stone swords that were 300 meters tall directly shattered. Seeing this, the sect master of the Hegemon sword sect felt his heart shatter. The two of them turned into sword light and shot into the sky. Woo! Waves of ghostly wails sounded throughout the sky. Zhou Xuanji directly activated Heavenly Retribution Martial Punishment and God Ghost Wails. Facing the legendary sword saint, he did not dare to be careless. The two of them quickly clashed together, and sword light exploded like fireworks, illuminating the sky. Zhou Xuanji used dual sword wills, the sky-dominating divine sword and heavenly lights. His right hand was heavy and powerful, while his left hand was ever-changing. Facing his barrage of attacks, Shi Shinzong did not fall into a disadvantage. He easily blocked Zhou Xuanji's two swords with just one sword. His sword speed was simply too fast. It was Zhou Xuanji's first time encountering such a swift opponent. As expected of the sword saint, his reputation is well deserved. Zhou Xuanji's heart trembled as he thought to himself. He began to use his full strength. Shi Shinzong was a little shocked in his heart. He did not expect Zhou Xuanji to have such exquisite sword techniques. He used two sword techniques at the same time. They did not clash, but they were extremely compatible. Genius. Although he admired Zhou Xuanji, Shi Shinzong did not go easy on him. Such a genius was worth defeating. At this moment, Shi Shinzong suddenly sped up. A faint white light appeared on the surface of his body, and his gaze became sharper. Sword will. The Saint Path sword turned from a gale to a tempest in his hand. The sword chi was like a tsunami, sending Zhou Xuanji flying back. Shi Shinzong stayed where he was and quickly swung his sword. A blazing sun appeared behind him out of nowhere. The blazing sun expanded rapidly, and its diameter reached hundreds of meters. It was a shocking sight. A massive sword might envelop the heavens and earth, making everyone feel extremely suppressed. They even felt a sense of suffocation. Zhou Xuanji activated the Ancestor Dragon sword straight away and transformed into a 5-clawed golden dragon. His body was 3,000 meters long and looked majestic and domineering. His entire body shone with a divine golden radiance. Shi Shinzong narrowed his eyes and slashed out. The blazing sun behind him leaped over his head and slammed into the 5-clawed golden dragon. Boom! A world-shaking explosion suddenly sounded out, causing the ears of the spectators to ring. The 5-clawed golden dragon was restrained by the blazing sun, and dragon roars could be heard continuously. The scene was so shocking that everyone was dumbfounded. This, so powerful? I think they are all qualified to become the top cultivator in the world. The Sword Emperor is so powerful. He's on par with the teacher of a great emperor, Mighty, who said that the Sword Emperor would lose. So exciting. This trip was not in vain. The cultivators were all incredibly excited and continuously cried out. The 5-clawed golden dragon powerfully tore apart the blazing sun, but Shi Shinzong quickly rushed over and tore apart the 5-clawed golden dragon with a single strike. Zhou Xuanji was not heavily injured. He gripped his two swords and unleashed universal attraction. Shi Shinzong felt a powerful suction force, and his body could not help but slow down. To Zhou Xuanji this was enough. He turned and unleashed 10,000 ultimate steps. Shi Shinzong flipped his hand and blocked Zhou Xuanji's 10,000 ultimate steps. Their gazes met. Their gazes were cold and sharp, and they could both see the shock in each other's eyes. They were both shocked by their respective abilities. Zhou Xuanji continued to swing his two swords. Shi Shinzong received the swords, but he was sent flying back. Following this, every time the swords clashed, he would be sent flying back, causing his face to become more and more pale. He suddenly laughed and said, "So it's like that." After saying this, he once again closed in on Zhou Xuanji. This time he did not circulate his spirit energy. "Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 329. After Shi Shinzong saw through world reincarnation, he could rely on his physical strength and sword techniques to contend with Zhou Xuanji. Gradually he started to use different sword techniques, which were ever-changing. Zhou Xuanji could not switch sword techniques either. The two of them began to compare their sword techniques. Their bodies continuously moved about, and sword flowers flashed as all sorts of abnormal signs appeared. There were many powerful experts among the spectators, and they were completely mesmerized by this. Both of their cultivations are so powerful, they can switch between so many sword techniques so smoothly. In other words, Zhou Xuanji is not inferior to the sword saint? It's not just strength, it's also the foundation of the way of the sword. Indeed, legends say that the sword emperor can develop a sword will from a high-grade sword technique in a day. In other words, the sword emperor is more powerful than the sword saint because he's simply too young. I support Zhou Xuanji. He killed so many great demons for the human race, and his contributions are even greater than Yangdi's. Look at Shi Shinzong. When he was alive, did he ever contribute to the human race? You might say he did, but that's the hegemon sword emperor. However, even after becoming a great emperor, he did not destroy the demon race. As they watched the battle, they discussed among themselves. Zhou Xuanji's support grew louder and louder. A legend was a legend in the end, and it was too far away from them. Zhou Xuanji was a top-tier hero in the world, who did not want to surpass their predecessors. However, many people still felt that Shi Shinzong was more powerful. Both of them have the potential to become great emperors, Bai Hao Yisin muttered to himself with a serious expression. He had seen countless geniuses, and both Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shinzong were among the top. He had seen countless geniuses, and Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shinzong were both at the top. He had seen countless geniuses, and both Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shinzong were among the top. If these two people were 90,000 years ago, it would be difficult to imagine what heights they would have reached. Clang, clang, clang. Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shinzong quickly clashed, turning into two rays of sword light that danced above the sea of clouds. This fellow is becoming more powerful. Zhou Xuanji inwardly felt quite shocked. He had used the power of two intimidating spirit legendary swords, and even though he could make up for the difference in cultivation, he could not suppress Shi Shinzong. He had underestimated Shi Shinzong. This person was truly powerful. Shi Shinzong felt even more shocked. This boy only had great realization realm level 9 cultivation, and he was able to fight evenly with him. One should know that his strength was enough to defeat a third tribulation bodiless immortal. Even Xinyuan Zhou was no match for him. This child's talent surpassed his. At that moment, Zhou Xuanji's arms shook as he unleashed sword chi soar. Countless traces of sword chi burst out from his body, forcing Shi Shinzong back. He immediately used the Emperor's Way Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. A golden Buddha that was thousands of meters tall appeared behind him. Thousands of arms grew out from the back of the golden Buddha, each holding a giant sword. Crackle, strands of heavenly lightning coiled around the thousand-hand sword Buddha, gathering together to form a thunderbolt. Golden light illuminated the earth. The high and mighty thousand-hand sword Buddha was like an unparalleled deity overlooking the earth. Everyone was dumbfounded. What kind of divine ability was this? Shi Shinzong was also stunned. He looked up at the thousand-hand sword Buddha like an ant looking up at a mountain. This is the Emperor's Way Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. Sword Saint, give it a try. Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. Following this, his body entered the thousand-hand sword Buddha. Sword intense state. He was the thousand-hand sword Buddha, and the thousand-hand sword Buddha was him. The thousand-hand sword Buddha opened its eyes and two beams of light shot out. Then a purple taiji symbol appeared on its forehead. A buzzing sound sounded out as if a great bell had rung. A vertical purple taiji symbol appeared behind the thousand-hand sword Buddha. It was even bigger than the thousand-hand sword Buddha, and it looked like a holy Buddha's halo, causing the thousand-hand sword Buddha's aura to become even more powerful. The Buddha in my heart does not appear in times of prosperity, but in times of chaos, to save the world from disaster. I will not use my own selfish desires to disturb a clan. In the current world there are no true Buddhas, only Buddhist cultivators who want to slay demons. They also have an undeniable responsibility for the chaos in the human race. As such, I created this sword technique to give the world a bright and peaceful world, to expel impurities and suppress evil. This is the Emperor's Way Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. Zhou Xuanji's voice sounded throughout the heavens and earth, as if a holy Buddha was creating all things. Everyone was shocked. and they immediately thought of Dongyuan Monastery. The conflict between the righteous and demonic sects had always been driven by Dongyuan Monastery. When the human race was in chaos, Dongyuan Monastery could not do anything. Soon they started to think about other things. On the ground there were also Dongyuan Monastery's monks. Hearing this, their faces became red. Even though they were furious, they could not help but think about it. Were they really doing the right thing? Shi Shinzong laughed. He raised the Saint Path sword, and the blazing sun once again appeared behind him. It was as tall as the 1,000-hand sword Buddha. Sword Emperor, you are indeed powerful. Sword will is incredibly easy for you, but you are still a bit lacking. You should know that sword will is not the end of the way of the sword. Today I will show you what is above sword will. Shi Shinzong said as he coldly harumphed, his tone filled with pride. He was the sword saint, the saint of the way of the sword. How could he allow a junior to surpass him? As he spoke, the blazing sun behind him rippled. The 1,000-hand sword Buddha narrowed its eyes and did not immediately act. Zhou Xuanji had heard the sword spirit say that there was a realm above sword will. Could it be that Shi Shinzong had already reached it? He wanted to see what it was. The 2 million spectators held their breaths, not daring to even breathe loudly. Clang. The Saint Path sword in Shi Shinzong's hand violently trembled, giving off a clear ringing that was incredibly piercing. Traces of intense flames flowed out of the Saint Path sword, looking like smoke rising up from a chimney. Soon, the intense flames reached a height of 3,000 meters and fused with the blazing sun. Shi Shinzong's entire right arm was wrapped in flames. At a glance, the blazing sun seemed to be connected to him, and his aura grew stronger and stronger. A might that surpassed a third tribulation scattered a mortal. In the distance, Fu Hao opened his eyes wide and cried out in shock, "Sword Soul!" The blazing sun on Shi Shinzong's body became more and more corporeal, and the top turned into the upper body of a human. It was incredibly majestic and domineering, and it was not inferior to the 1,000-hand sword Buddha at all. Zhou Xuanji could sense that there was no sword chi in the sword soul of fiery flames. Instead, it was formed by gathering the world's spirit chi. Apart from that, there was also an indescribable power. In contrast, his 1,000-hand sword Buddha was made of corporeal sword chi. Even though the two looked majestic, they were fundamentally different. Shi Shinzong raised the Saint Path sword slowly with an icy expression and said, "Sword Emperor, I hope you can withstand this sword strike." Just as he spoke, he slashed out with extreme speed. The sword soul on his body turned into a fiery long sword that disappeared in an instant. Before Zhou Xuanji could react, the 1,000-hand sword Buddha was cut in half. Boom! Shi Shinzong was blasted back by his own power, and blood spurted out from his body. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared over the horizon and smashed into a tall mountain. No one knew if he was dead or alive. Silence. The heavens and earth fell silent. Zhou Xuanji levitated in the air, his hands trembling. A stream of blood flowed down from his forehead and dyed his handsome face red. He frowned. His gaze was cold, but his heart was in great shock. That sword strike. His world reincarnation could not completely block it. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 330. More than 2 million spectators were dumbfounded, and they couldn't believe their eyes. Shi Shinzong had made it sound so powerful, and the raging flame sword soul was incredibly shocking. Its might caused them to tremble in fear. They had thought that the two of them would have a soul-stirring, peerless battle or that Zhou Xuanji would be heavily injured. But he never expected. Shi Shinzong had destroyed the Emperor's Wei 1,000-hand sword Buddha with a single swing of his sword, but he had still been forced to kneel? The 10,000 swords Divine Ridge's master, Shi Huanming, was dumbfounded. How is this possible? Primogenitor. Shi Huanming's entire body trembled. With a thud, he knelt on the ground. The Hegemon sword sect master did not mock him. He was also shocked. Could it be the world Buddha art? How old is he to be able to cultivate world reincarnation? Bai Hao Yisan swallowed his saliva and looked at Zhou Xuanji with fear in his eyes. He had once witnessed the power of the world Buddha art. That person was the human emperor at that time. Although he was no match for the Renhuang, he was still stunning. If the Renhuang was given another 10,000 years, the one who would be defeated might be the Renhuang. Boom. The whole place was in an uproar. Everyone was talking excitedly. Oh my God. What did I see? The sword emperor is mighty. Too domineering. Is the sword saint dead? That's it. As expected of my belief. Now, who still dares to say that he isn't a sword emperor? I knew Zhou Xuanji would win. He's undefeatable. The millions of voices converged together as if they were about to overturn the heavens. Zhou Qingxin, Princess Xuanya, Yang Xindi, Great Chen's emperor, and the others all excitedly cheered for Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xiaoqi was bouncing on the spot, almost causing the little black snake to faint. High in the sky, Zhou Xuanji tried his best to stabilize his body, making it look like he was fine. In fact, that sword strike had already injured him. If it wasn't for the fact that he had fused with the Violet Demon Monarch's heart, if he had fought Shi Shinzong in the past, he might have been instantly killed by Shi Shinzong's sword. No wonder Xinyuan Zhou died at his hands. So that was how it was. Was this the power of the sword soul? Fast to the point of being unpredictable, tyrannical to the point of shattering mountains and rivers. His heart was burning with passion. He must cultivate a sword soul. At this time a figure quickly flew over. It was Shi Shinzong. He was covered in blood, but his eyes were still sharp and clear. With the Saint Path sword in his right hand, he locked onto Zhou Xuanji. The Tianxia map continuously provided Zhou Xuanji with spirit energy, and he once again unleashed the Emperor's Way Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. The majestic Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha quickly danced, wildly slashing at Shi Shinzong. Shi Shinzong swung his sword to block. Although the Sage Dao sword was far weaker than the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha's golden sword, its power was not inferior at all. It was like a grain of rice striking a roof beam. Sword Saint, your attainments in the way of the sword are indeed impressive, but you are no match for me. Zhou Xuanji loudly laughed. The Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha's power became stronger and stronger, and with the support of heavenly lightning, Shi Shinzong's body became more and more bloody. Your time has passed. As he shouted, the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha used the sky-dominating divine sword. The thousand swords merged into one and slashed down furiously. Clang. Shi Shinzong was blasted down and smashed through the ground, kicking up clouds of dust. The surrounding 10 kilometers collapsed, and countless cracks spread in all directions, looking like a spider web that wanted to cover the ground. Zhou Xuanji coughed up a mouthful of blood, and his arms slightly trembled. The sword soul's might was too powerful and had injured his internal organs. Now that he had used his full strength, he naturally suffered a backlash. However, he did not care. He had to defeat Shi Shinzong. The heavens and earth fell silent. Everyone was shocked by Zhou Xuanji's domineeringness. He looked down at Shi Shinzong and said coldly, "Sword Saint, do you still want to fight?" Rumble, roiling flames blasted away the dust and rose up from the massive crater like a volcano erupting, rushing into the sky. Shi Shinzong used the intense flames to rush into the sky. His eyes were cold as he stared at Zhou Xuanji and said, "I won't lose." He had his pride. He would either die or win. There was no such thing as losing, nor would there be a tie. The Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha once again slashed out. It was also the sky-dominating divine sword, and it gave off unstoppable momentum. Shi Shinzong unleashed the sword soul, and intense flames flashed as a massive sword that was as long as a mountain range slashed out. It came quickly and disappeared quickly as well. After colliding with the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha's golden sword, it exploded and turned into a sea of flames. Shi Shinzong once again fell. Zhou Xuanji was sent flying, but he managed to stabilize his body in time. Blood continuously flowed out of his mouth, gushing out like a fountain. God damn it. This fellow really doesn't want to live. Zhou Xuanji inwardly swore. Since Shi Shinzong did not want to live, he would go all out. He did not believe that he could not win. Legendary swords appeared above his head, and with a thought, the legendary swords quickly got into formation, casting the Sealing Dream Sword formation. A violet pillar of light descended from the sword formation, smashing into the ground incredibly quickly, causing the ground to tremble. Rumble, a sandstorm rose and swept across the land, startling the nearby cultivators into hiding. Within the violet light, Shi Shinzong gripped the Saint Path sword and disregarded his injuries as he forcefully stood up. "I am the Sword Saint, invincible in the mortal realm, why should I lose?" His sleeves exploded, and he bent his legs as he forcefully broke through the Sealing Dream Sword formation and once again rushed at Zhou Xuanji. Was this fellow using a cheat to explode his seeds? He still did not die? Zhou Xuanji was infuriated and madly used the power of God Ghost Howl and Heavenly Retribution Martial Punishment. Countless howls filled the heavens and earth, creating a chilling scene. Even with his powerful physique, the surface of his body started to crack and blood flowed out. The pain was like a blood-red flame. The violet Tai Chi diagram on his forehead gave off light, and he let go of the legendary swords. He raised his right hand and suddenly swung it downwards. Boom! All of the legendary swords rushed up. The two intimidating spirit legendary swords were at the front, followed by the Heavenly Soul legendary sword, followed by the Glorious Gold legendary sword, and the Amethyst legendary sword. All of the legendary swords exploded out with their own power. All sorts of lights gathered together, forming a sword of light that descended from the sky. Shi Shinzong gritted his teeth and once again unleashed the sword soul. This time he used all of the spirit energy in his body. In that moment, a massive sword of intense flames flashed and collided with all of the legendary swords. A deafening explosion sounded out, and intense light exploded out, causing everyone's vision to become white. The sound disappeared. It was as if their eardrums had been torn. It was like the explosion of the beginning of the world, causing everything to lose its color and noise. Zhou Xuanji almost fainted. He felt as if his body no longer belonged to him, and he could not control himself as he fell. He gritted his teeth and desperately used the Qianxia map to provide him with spirit energy. Only with great difficulty did he manage to stabilize himself. The intense light dissipated, and the bright world became dim. Dust covered the ground, covering the sky and covering the sun. It was impossible to see anything. Zhou Xuanji deeply breathed in. He could sense Shi Shinzong's aura. He immediately flew over. Right now he was like an arrow at the end of its flight and his flying speed was very slow. Only after a while did he come before Shi Shinzong. Within the massive crater, Shi Shinzong half knelt on the ground. He gripped the Saint Path sword with both hands and stabbed it into the ground, helping him stabilize his injured body so that he did not fall. Zhou Xuanji looked down at him and said calmly, "You have lost." Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 331. Shi Shinzong didn't tremble nor did he pant. His life force was about to be used up, and his body was stiff, unable to move. He could not look up and could not see Zhou Xuanji's expression. He said with difficulty, "I can still." Zhou Xuanji frowned. This old guy was a sore loser? Since it's a spar, there's no enmity between us. Do you really want me to kill you before you stop? Zhou Xuanji said coldly. Seeing Shi Shinzong like this made him feel quite disappointed. As a Sword Dao Grandmaster he should be able to let go of things. Where there is life there is hope. I'm already a dead man. Shi Shinzong closed his eyes and said calmly. How could he still have the face to walk in this world after losing to a junior? Since he had already died once he might as well die again. The wind and sand billowed. The two of them seemed to be in the middle of chaos. They couldn't see anyone else and no one could see them. You have no regrets? Zhou Xuanji asked. Shi Shinzong was very powerful, and if such an expert died he would have one less opponent. There weren't many people in the world who could be his opponent. Shi Shinzong did not reply. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. I'll still not replying. See if I don't beat you to death. Do you know what the greatest regret of your descendants is? He asked in a melancholy tone. Shi Shinzong asked in confusion. What? Zhou Xuanji sighed and said, your disciple, the Hegemon Sword Emperor, succeeded in becoming a great emperor, but you were just a step away from becoming a great emperor. Isn't that your greatest regret? It's not that the world wants to doubt you, but we believe that you will definitely become a great emperor. Don't tell me you didn't have such regrets before you died? As a man you already know that there is a higher sky. Don't you want to go and take a look? Besides, you lost to me today. Don't you want to defeat me again? The emotions in his tone fluctuated and it was extremely provocative. Shi Shinzong lowered his head, making it impossible to see his expression. I don't understand what you've been through, but I've always walked on the path of failure. How many times have I wandered from place to place? How many times have I run for my life? I can even say that I've been a failure since I was born. If I were like you, unable to accept defeat, I'm afraid you wouldn't have lost. Towards the end, Zhou Xuanji's tone became calm. Of course, he knew in his heart that he had won by a large margin. In a one-on-one fight, unless the opponent's realm far surpassed his, he had never lost. Shi Shinzong slowly stood up. Zhou Xuanji's expression changed. What the hell, this guy was recovering his stamina and was listening to his nonsense on purpose. Shi Shinzong raised his head, his gaze as sharp as when he was fighting. His heart skipped a beat. Oh no. Another fierce battle? Although he was a little flustered, he appeared calm on the surface. If he could defeat Shi Shinzong once, he could defeat him again. He was only afraid that he would be seriously injured and give someone with ulterior motives an opportunity to take advantage of. I'll wait for you in the upper realm. Shi Shinzong said in a low voice as he looked at Zhou Xuanji, causing him to feel quite stunned. Upper realm? Bang! A pillar of light broke through the billowing dust and landed on his body. He slowly rose up. Ascension. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He ascended just like that? He had originally wanted to take this fellow as a sword slave. He wanted to say something but hesitated. He wanted to ask, could he be given a chance? Zhou Xuanji, you are indeed more powerful than me. I admit my defeat. From today onwards, I will treat you as my greatest opponent. I will wait for you in the upper realm. Next time we will fight again. I will wait for you. Shi Shenzong looked down at him and said word by word. A violent gale blew up the dust around them. One was in the sky while the other was on the ground. Both of them were covered with wounds and were covered with blood. They only had eyes for each other, and they could sense each other's battle intent. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and laughed. This is good too. This is the best result, he mumbled. There were not many powerful cultivators that he acknowledged, and Shi Shenzong was one of them. At this moment, Shi Shenzong's voice suddenly came, sounding domineering and proud. Today I, Shi Shenzong, admit my defeat to Zhou Xuanji wholeheartedly. In my heart, he is the Sword Emperor and he will become the most powerful Sword Emperor. I will wait for him in the upper realm. One day I will defeat him. Because I am the Sword Saint. Rumble, everyone looked up. Even though the sky was covered by the sand and wind, they could still see the light of ascension. Everyone's face was filled with shock and admiration. They were shocked that Zhou Xuanji could win. They admired Shi Shenzong's carefreeness. Such a sword saint was fully deserving of the title. As Baihao Yisun shielded the beauties from the wind and sand, he muttered, Shi Shenzong? Interesting. Looks like you're going to turn the higher realm upside down. As for Zhou Xuanji, he did not want to comment on him. He always felt that he and Zhou Xuanji were fated to clash. Yang Xindi sighed emotionally and said, I'm afraid we have all greatly underestimated the Sword Emperor. He couldn't help but recall the World Hero Conference. Looking back, he realized how wise he had been. What he said to Zhou Xuanji back then could be exchanged for 10,000 years of peace for Great Shang. The other spectators also came back to their senses. This is too exciting. This battle will be recorded in the annals of history. The Sword Saint lost in strength, but he didn't lose his name. I really want to go to the upper realm to see their next battle. Zhou Xuanji is so young and won't ascend for thousands of years. Let's wait and see how long it will take for them to become number one in the world. Isn't that the best in the world? Can Sunlight Emperor defeat the Sword Saint? The Sword Saint ascended, and after everyone admired him, they began to imagine Zhou Xuanji's future. As long as Zhou Xuanji did not die prematurely, his future would be unimaginable. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji sat on the ground and began circulating his qi to heal his injuries. The light of ascension was still illuminating the dark heavens and earth. Shi Shenzong could no longer see him, but he did not look away. Zhou Xuanji, you might be the person he was talking about. Shi Shenzong smiled slightly. After he figured it out, he did not feel down. Instead, he felt good. Today's battle would be unforgettable for him. Clap, clap. A round of applause came and Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes. He saw a boy hopping toward him. He was clapping as he ran. He had an innocent smile on his face. Zhou Xuanji frowned. Numerous legendary swords appeared out of nowhere and protected him. Those who could come to the Sword Emperor Canyon were not simple. Since this boy dared to look for him at this time, he must have come with ill intentions. He thought about it seriously and immediately thought of someone. Lin Changa said that there was a boy with Sunlight Emperor who had unfathomable power. Could it be him? Sword Emperor, you are really powerful. Even the Sword Saint was defeated by you. If you continue to grow, the human race's fate will flourish forever, right? Fu Hao giggled. His eyes turned into two crescents. He flipped his right hand and a dark green dagger appeared in his hand. He still had a harmless smile on his face. Zhou Xuanji said with disdain, the people around Sunlight Emperor are so lowly. It seems like Sunlight Emperor is not a hero. Whether Fu Hao represented Sunlight Emperor or himself, Zhou Xuanji felt disdain. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 332. Facing Zhou Xuanji's mockery, Fu Hao was indifferent. He laughed and said, you're right, but no matter how much the dead know, it's useless. He stomped with his right foot and charged toward Zhou Xuanji. The ancient god sword condensed the souls of 8 powerful beings and they all attacked. Just when Fu Hao was about to touch Zhou Xuanji, he was blown away by a powerful gale. He was not injured. Instead, he smiled mockingly and said, Zhou Xuanji, why resist? This will only increase your pain. Bang! A berserk aura exploded out from his body, and his body seemed to be covered in a layer of faint blue flames. His body blurred and appeared above Zhou Xuanji's head. His body flipped and his right leg smashed down like a whip, carrying with it a tremendous force. The souls of the 8 great cultivators used their own techniques and sent him flying again. This time, Fu Hao didn't dare to lower his guard. He narrowed his eyes as he looked at the souls of the Almighties and asked with a smile, "Are these the souls in the Tianxia map?" Zhou Xuanji did not reply. Ignorant child, he only knew about the Tianxia map. Fu Hao took a deep breath and his eyes became sharp, as if he wanted to end the battle quickly. If the sandstorm around him dissipated, he would expose himself. Zhou Xuanji's reputation leaned towards benevolence and righteousness. If it was discovered that he had killed Zhou Xuanji now, it would greatly affect Yang Di's reputation. It might even obstruct the establishment of the Great Fate Empire. He charged at Zhou Xuanji again. He split into 3 clones and attacked Zhou Xuanji from different directions. The dark green dagger was thrown out by him. Because the distance was too close, the 8 souls could not stop it in time. Puchi, the dagger stabbed into Zhou Xuanji's chest. It did not pierce through, but the blade pierced into his flesh. Zhou Xuanji's expression did not change, and he coldly harumphed as he activated world reincarnation, sending the dark green dagger flying back. Fu Hao quickly took over the dark green dagger. A vertical eye opened on his forehead and stared at Zhou Xuanji. 3 bolts of lightning shot out and turned into dragons and snakes, landing on Zhou Xuanji's body instantly. Lightning flashed, but Zhou Xuanji was not affected. He possessed the power of heavenly thunder, so how could he be hurt by lightning? Fu Hao frowned. He did not expect the heavily injured Zhou Xuanji to be so difficult to kill. Shio. An air-piercing sound was heard. Fu Hao's scalp went numb and he jumped away subconsciously. The Saint Path sword descended from the sky and landed before Zhou Xuanji. Fu Hao looked up in shock. He had never thought that Shi Shinzong would act. He immediately turned around, burrowed into the soil and disappeared. The divine path sword rose up and disappeared in the billowing dust. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and laughed. The sword saint had quite a character. Then his eyes turned icy cold. In the exchange just now, he had a clear understanding of Fu Hao's strength. He was probably at the peak of the Mahayana realm, which was nothing to be afraid of. However, Fu Hao's background forced him to think more. At this moment, Zhou Xiaoqi ran over with the little black snake. They were very excited and surrounded Zhou Xuanji, chattering non-stop. Zhou Xuanji did not reveal anything about Fu Hao. He felt that there was something fishy about this. If Sunlight Emperor was really despicable, why would he send such a weakling to kill him? At the edge of the forest, Fu Hao appeared on the cliff and looked at the distant sky covered by the dust storm. His lips curled up. Zhou Xuanji, don't disappoint me. He turned around and was about to leave when he stopped in his tracks. A figure walked out of the forest. It was the man in the raincoat. He stood under the shade of a tree and asked, "Fu Hao, are you still the same you?" Fu Hao did not panic but replied with a smile, "You don't belong to this world. Don't tell me you want to break your vows and attack me?" He continued ahead. The man in the raincoat continued, "If I tell Sunlight Emperor about this, what will he think?" Fu Hao walked to his side. Without looking at him, he lowered his head and said with a smile, "He has never trusted me or you. What's the point of this?" Just when he was about to walk away, he seemed to have thought of something and continued, "Oh yeah, you should think about what your plan will be if Zhou Xuanji defeats Sunlight Emperor." With that, he laughed out loud and walked into the forest without the slightest scruple. After he left, the man in the raincoat walked to the edge of the cliff. "How can a kid like you understand the schemes of a tribulation executive?" His tone was mocking. His voice drifted in the air and disappeared with the wind. The sandstorm dissipated gradually, and Zhou Xuanji was still recovering from his injuries. Groups of cultivators gathered around him, and each of them looked very excited. The ones closest to him were Great Zhou, Great Qin, Great Shang, and the Hegemon Sword Sect, just in case someone ambushed him. And Shi Shinzong had already left the northern wilderness region. After a long while, Zhou Xuanji decided to tell them about Fu Hao's sneak attack. He projected Fu Hao's appearance with his spirit energy before asking about his identity. Soon, someone recognized that Fu Hao was Sunlight Emperor's servant. He pretended to be surprised before saying with disdain, "This kid ambushed me just now. If not for the Sword Saint, I might have been even more injured. Such a lowly person doesn't deserve to be the great Emperor's servant." With this, the cultivators were in an uproar. Sunlight Emperor's servant ambushed Zhou Xuanji? Their imagination started to run wild. Could this be Sunlight Emperor's idea? Definitely. Sunlight Emperor is the top cultivator in the world. Now that the Sword Emperor defeated the Sword Saint, the next step is to challenge his throne. Impossible. Sunlight Emperor doesn't look like such a lowly person. Then what do you think? Sunlight Emperor only brought Fu Hao with him. Could the Sword Emperor be lying? The Sword Emperor is an upright person. Why would he lie? Although Sunlight Emperor stopped the war between humans and demons, Jihuang Demon Lord died in the hands of the Sword Emperor. Hearing the cultivators' discussions, Zhou Xuanji was expressionless, but he felt a little pleased in his heart. After that, he got up slowly and chatted with Zhou Qingxin and the others for a while before leaving. He sent invitations to Great Zhou, Great Shang and Great Qin in advance. When Emperor Sword Court was established, the three empires must come. The three emperors were delighted. After defeating the Sword Saint, Zhou Xuanji was still not arrogant. He still remembered their friendship, which made them very satisfied. Zhou Xuanji sat on Zhou Xiaoqi's back, and Zhou Xiaoqi left swiftly on a cloud. The little black snake coiled on Zhou Xiaoqi's head and cursed, "I didn't expect Sunlight Emperor's servant to be so despicable. With his little power, is he trying to incite hatred between Master and Sunlight Emperor?" Fu Hao escaped too quickly. If he insisted on attacking, the Sword Saint would not be able to stop him. After all, the Sword Saint was in the Ascension Light. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "Who cares? But Sunlight Emperor must have something to do with this. As the top cultivator in the world, how could Sunlight Emperor be stupid? And Fu Hao is his bodyguard. Sunlight Emperor must know that he came to the Sword Emperor Canyon." He suddenly felt interested. They headed straight towards Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji learned a lot from this battle, so he decided to focus on cultivation. At the same time, the news about the Sword Emperor defeating the Sword Saint and the Sword Saint's ascension spread. Within 3 days, the news spread across the entire northern wilderness region, including the human and demon races. A contemporary legend defeated a historical legend. Shi Shinzong even said that Zhou Xuanji would become the most powerful Sword Emperor. These words carried a lot of weight. He was the teacher of a great emperor after all. Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 333. In less than half a month. The news of Zhou Xuanji defeating Shi Shinzong spread like wildfire. From the empire's high officials to ordinary people, everyone was talking about this. This battle pushed Zhou Xuanji's reputation to the extreme. In the hearts of countless people, he was already a supreme expert at the same level as Yang Di. The two of them were bound to fight. Soon, the news about Fu Hao's sneak attack on Zhou Xuanji was spread by some people. This matter quickly spread, and a storm of public opinion against Sunlight Emperor was coming. In a dilapidated temple, Xian Xianghua was meditating and cultivating. Beside him stood the leader of the 36 demon leaders, Qin Zheng. The other devil leaders were sitting at the side, and all of them had looks of disbelief on their faces. Qin Zheng recounted the battle at Sword Emperor Cliff. In the end he sighed, "The Sword Emperor's growth speed is simply too horrifying. It looks like Sect Master will not be able to return to being the world's first." If it was someone else he would not dare to say this, but it was Zhou Xuanji, and he was not afraid of Xian Xianghua's anger. Hearing this, Xian Xianghua opened her eyes and said proudly, "Of course. The man that I like is naturally incredible. The title of number 1 in the world will belong to him sooner or later. Not only will he be the number 1 in the northern wilderness region, but he will also become even more powerful." The demon leaders nodded, all of them sighing emotionally. That kid was only in his 50s. Thousand Hands Devil Qin Gang stood in the corner with a complicated expression. Back when he had first met Zhou Xuanji, he had never thought that Zhou Xuanji would reach such heights and come so quickly. After everyone sighed, Xian Xianghua asked, "What has the evil king been doing recently?" After reviving the ancient Diablo king, she did not restrict his freedom. Reporting to sect leader, the old sect leader is in the north and seems to be looking for something. Qin Zheng answered truthfully. Speaking of this matter, he was also puzzled. After the revival of the evil king, he did not take over the position of the sect master. In fact, he did not even mention it. Xian Xianghua fell into deep thought. The north was a world of ice and snow. It was a dangerous place, but it also contained countless fortuitous encounters. It seemed like the evil king had another plan. Xian Xianghua instructed, "Continue to keep an eye on him. Also, continue to recruit disciples. The more the better. Don't focus on quality." Qin Zheng accepted the order and left quickly. Xian Xianghua's eyes turned cold as she mumbled, "Fu Hao, I will make you die a horrible death." After returning to Skyfall, Jiang Shui, Lin Chang'e, Huang Lianxin, and the others all came up to congratulate Zhou Xuanji. The news had already reached their ears, causing them to be excited for a few days. After defeating the Sword Saint, how great would Zhou Xuanji's prestige reach? They didn't dare to imagine it, but they were looking forward to it. On the day the sect was established, Zhou Xuanji could raise his arm and call for help. How many cultivators would come to join the sect? After congratulating him, they were filled with righteous indignation towards Fu Hao's actions, and all of them threatened to kill Fu Hao in the future to vent their hatred. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and laughed. After saying a few simple words, he walked to a place where there was no one around and started to cultivate. Everyone understood that he must have comprehended something during the battle, so they didn't disturb him. Daoya old man stared at Zhou Xuanji and fell into deep thought. Why is there something wrong with this kid's aura? Could it be that Fu Hao did something to him? He mumbled to himself and did not go up to ask Zhou Xuanji. He did not want to disturb Zhou Xuanji's enlightenment. On the way back, Zhou Xuanji kept thinking about the Sword Soul. During the battle, Shi Xinzong had used his Sword Soul multiple times. The Sword Soul was mighty when it was still and thunderous when it moved. Its power was something that even world reincarnation could not completely resist. If he could master it, he would be a great weapon against the other owners of the Tianxia map. He believed that he would meet the previous owners of the Tianxia map after he ascended. That person also knew the world Buddha art. If he became his enemy, it would be troublesome. The Sword Spirit said that as long as he could master a Sword Soul, he could quickly master any sword technique in the future. He was looking forward to it. Once he mastered the Sword Soul, he would surely defeat Yang Di. He did not believe that Yang Di could leave Shi Xinzong in the dust. Filled with fighting spirit, he took out the book cutter sword and began practicing. He was practicing the white crane sword technique. This was the sword technique that he practiced the earliest and the one that he was most familiar with. In the courtyard of Sun Hill, Fu Hao knelt on the ground with his forehead touching the ground. Yang Di was still writing and did not look up at him. He had been kneeling for 3 days and 3 nights, but Yang Di did not ask him to get up. He was very patient and did not utter a single word. "Tell me, why did you do this?" Yang Di put down his brush and asked as he stared at Fu Hao. His expression was indifferent and no one could tell what he was thinking. Fu Hao lowered his head and said with gritted teeth, "Zhou Xuanji defeated Shi Xinzong and threatened the Great Emperor. Of course, I want to help the Great Emperor get rid of him." Boom! Just when he finished speaking, he felt an unstoppable gust of wind blowing toward him, sending him flying and crashing through the wall. After that, he quickly returned to his original spot and knelt. "Then why did you give up halfway?" Yang Di continued to ask. He walked around the desk and came up to Fu Hao. Fu Hao sensed the murderous aura and replied anxiously, "Even though Zhou Xuanji was severely injured, it was still difficult for me to kill him. And with the Sword Saint's help, I could only retreat." The corner of Yang Di's lips curled up in a mocking smile. "Fu Hao, if you did not take me in back then, I would have died in the belly of a demon. Later on, I obtained the Great Emperor's inheritance by chance, and my cultivation improved tremendously. You were not talented enough, but I kept improving your cultivation for the sake of our old friendship, allowing you to reach where you are today. In this world, you and I depend on each other. I have always treated you as my family. But after thinking about it for all these years, I always felt that something was wrong." Hearing Yang Di's words, Fu Hao was covered in cold sweat. Fu Hao wanted to explain, but he did not know what to say. He suddenly realized that Yang Di's conjecture about him was deeper than he had imagined. "If you want me to trust you again, I will give you a mission. Go to the north and find Lu Wuji's cave abode. If you can find it, I will forgive you. But if I can't get what I want, I will kill you myself," Yang Di ordered coldly. Sunlight Emperor ordered coldly. Hearing this, Fu Hao suddenly raised his head. He cried out in fear, "Lu Wuji? What do you want to do?" Yang Di's eyes flickered with a strange look as he said, "I heard that Lu Wuji was the most powerful being in the human race. Even the human emperor at that time was no match for him. His Yuan Shen had left his body and shattered the void. The body he left behind was indestructible and sealed deep underground in the north. I just want to see how powerful his body is." Fu Hao took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. He took a deep look at Yang Di and said with a complicated tone, "Great Emperor, you really hit it well." Yang Di was in closed-door cultivation all year round, and he was the one who helped him with all kinds of trivial matters and intelligence. He thought that Yang Di was already in the palm of his hand, but he did not expect Yang Di to even know about Lu Wuji's body. He felt a chill down his spine, and the more he thought about it, the more terrified he became. Lu Wuji's body is very dangerous. 50,000 years ago, it was dug out by someone and was slaughtered. If it was not for Devil Emperor Dugu, the northern wilderness region would have become a dead land. Do you want to repeat the tragedy of the past? Fu Hao asked while gritting his teeth. This matter was too dangerous and he did not dare to agree immediately. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 334. Facing Fu Hao's interrogation, Sunlight Emperor's eyes flickered and said, "If you are unwilling, then you can reincarnate today." Boom. An extremely powerful aura erupted, causing the mountains within 100 miles to tremble. Fu Hao was like a leaf in a storm on the verge of collapsing. His face was pale but he could only grit his teeth and agree. Sunlight Emperor waved his hand and he left quickly. Even Great Emperor Heartless and the Sword Saint have revived. So what if there's another Lu Wuji? Sunlight Emperor mumbled to himself with a smile. It was too lonely to be the top cultivator for 3,000 years. He desperately needed a strong enemy to push himself to the next level. As for Shi Xinzong, Zhou Xuanji and Xinyuan Zhou, he did not take them seriously. He wanted to challenge someone who became a great emperor. Not these mortals. He walked to his desk and picked up his brush to continue writing. There was a piece of white paper on the desk and 2 words were written on it. Ancient and modern. Sunlight Emperor did not write immediately but fell into deep thought as he stared at the words. At the top of Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji continued to swing his sword, like a white crane dancing gracefully. Ning Zifeng, Lin Changge, Meng Tianlang, Qin Bantian, and Beixiao Wangjian stood nearby and watched quietly. Beixiao Wangjian could not understand. He glanced at the 4 beside him and saw that they were concentrating. He felt a little disappointed, but for the sake of his reputation he remained calm. Lin Changge squinted his eyes and thought to himself, how long are these 4 going to stand there? He did not know that Ning Zifeng, Meng Tianlang and Qin Bantian were also anxious. Initially they were only curious about Zhou Xuanji's sword practice. Qin Bantian was very competitive and said that they would see who could figure out what was going on. After that they continued to stand there. The sword soul was Shi Xinzong's greatest achievement in his life. How could they see through it with their own eyes? Zhou Xuanji did not know about their competition and was still immersed in the sword's way. He had already practiced the white crane sword technique tens of thousands of times, day and night, but he still could not figure out the key point of the sword soul. What am I lacking? Zhou Xuanji thought hard as he trained his sword instinctively. He began recalling the scene when Shi Xinzong used the sword soul. Time continued to pass. After an hour, Lin Changge, Beixiao Wangjian, and the other 2 looked at each other and finally left without saying a word. Even Zhou Xuanji was still trying to figure it out, so naturally they could not understand it. However, they didn't point it out. They gave face to each other and to themselves. 1 month later. Zhou Xuanji was still practicing the white crane sword technique, which made Jiang Shui worried. She told Daoya Old Man about this. Don't worry, this kid must be practicing some amazing skill. Just ignore him. Daoya Old Man said indifferently. He then changed the topic and said, I asked you to calculate the south of the northern wilderness region the other day. Today you can calculate the north. The Tao of divination could not only predict a person's karmic luck and future, but it could also predict the future of an area. He had preached to Jiang Shui for dozens of years, and this girl's divination ability was already very strong. Jiang Shui took a deep breath, closed her eyes and began to calculate. Daoya Old Man looked back at Zhou Xuanji. In the current world, no one knew a sword soul, so he did not know what Zhou Xuanji was cultivating. However, he noticed that the strange aura on Zhou Xuanji's body was getting denser and denser, which was not a good thing. Just when he was thinking about how to help Zhou Xuanji, Jiang Shui opened her eyes suddenly. Grand Teacher, I divined a person, she said, biting her lips lightly. Daoya Old Man asked in astonishment. I asked you to calculate the north's heaven and earth. How did you find a person? Jiang Shui replied honestly. She divined that in a world of ice and snow, there was a white-haired figure walking slowly with his head lowered. He was dragging a corpse in each of his hands on the snow-covered ground. Daoya Old Man heard her and became even more curious. He asked her to project the scene. It was easy to project a scene with only 3 people. Jiang Shui closed her eyes and formed a spell with both hands. A water ball appeared in front of her. The scene that Jiang Shui described appeared in the water ball. Lin Changge, Huang Lianxin and the rest who were not far away noticed this and came over. Jiang Shui had already demonstrated her divination ability. They often heard her talk about the future, so they were very interested. Isn't this Fu Hao? He's dead? So easy for him. Lin Changa pointed at the child's corpse in the white-haired figure's right hand and cried out in shock. The group was shocked. This corpse was Fu Hao's? They turned their attention to the other corpse. The white-haired figure broke their necks and dragged them with his hands around their throats, which was why the group could see their faces clearly. It's Diablo. Zhou Xuanji's voice came coldly, which made everyone shudder in fear. They saw that he had appeared behind Huang Lianxin. Diablo? Who is this person? How could he kill Diablo and Fu Hao? And why are these two people in the north? Daoya old man frowned. He stroked his beard and fell into deep thought. Zhou Xuanji stared at the white-haired figure. He felt that he had seen him somewhere before, but he could not match it to a certain person. Because this figure was dressed in rags and had a hunched back, like an old man who had been imprisoned for a long time. He had seen many people like this before, so it was difficult for him to identify who it was. Moreover, this person could kill Diablo and Fu Hao and leave their corpses intact, which meant that he was much more powerful than the two. With the same level of power, it was difficult to leave an enemy's corpse intact. Bai Hao Yisun was the extreme. Even if he died, he would self-destruct and perish together with his enemy. Let me divine it again. Daoya old man took a deep breath and said with a deep voice. Everyone's expression became strange. Will this guy vomit blood again? Daoya old man was a little hesitant, but this was an important matter, so he decided to take the risk. Even Jiang Shui could divine it without restraint, so why couldn't he? He closed his eyes and divined with his fingers. Piff! A mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth. His face was pale and he almost fell down. Beishao Wangjian quickly held him up and said unpleasantly, "Old man, don't force yourself if you can't do it. I feel that you will die from the divination." Zhou Xuanji's face twitched slightly. He felt that something was wrong too. Could it be that the old man's body was getting weaker? Would vomiting blood so frequently shorten his lifespan? Demon. Unparalleled demon. Daoya old man opened his bloodshot eyes and cried out with a trembling voice. He fell into fear and ignored everyone else. He hugged his arms and repeated the word, demon, repeatedly. Everyone's hair stood on end. It was the first time that Daoya old man lost his composure like this. Could that white-haired figure really be an unparalleled demon? After all, even the ancient Diablo died in his hands. The group began to comfort Daoya old man. A long while later, Daoya old man calmed down, but he was still in shock. He sat down with his legs crossed and took a deep breath. The world is going to be in chaos, he said. That unparalleled demon will appear from the north. Even Great Emperor Heartless was no match for him. Even though Great Emperor Heartless self-destructed in front of him, he was not affected at all. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 335. Great Emperor Heartless would self-destruct in the face of a peerless demon? Zhou Xuanji and the others had strange expressions on their faces. They felt that this was within their expectations, but at the same time, it was unexpected. The current Great Emperor Heartless would self-destruct whenever he met an enemy he couldn't defeat. But how did Daoya old man predict this? Could it be that the Heartless Emperor was related to the future of the North? Evil King and Fu Hao might be the reason for drawing out the demons, but what about Great Emperor Heartless? Everyone fell into deep thought and the atmosphere became silent. Qin Bantian suddenly laughed and said, "Don't worry. With me, the Yellow Dragon's royal bloodline's 10,000-year prince, around no matter what kind of peerless evil demon they are nothing." He put his hands on his hips and laughed loudly, causing everyone to roll their eyes. The tense atmosphere also dissipated. Zhou Xuanji turned around and left to continue comprehending the sword soul. He already had an idea. He estimated that he would be able to cultivate the sword soul soon. By then, he would be able to cultivate the sword soul of all his sword techniques, and his strength would definitely increase exponentially. The matter of the peerless evil demon caused the others to cultivate even harder. In the following period of time, nothing major happened in the northern wilderness region. The battle between Zhou Xuanji and the Sword Saint continued for a long time, and there were always people talking about it. Occasionally the matter of Fu Hao would be mentioned, but this matter did not cause too much of a stir. It was obvious that there was a powerful force suppressing it. What was worth mentioning was that Great Zhou, Great Shang and Great Qin had officially formed an alliance, becoming the strongest existence among the dynasties. Of course, in terms of peak battle prowess, they could not compare to the Hunyuan Empire. However, the Hunyuan Empire had more peak experts, so if they were to truly fight, it would not just be a clash between empires. The various factions behind them would join in as well. It would be difficult to predict who would emerge victorious. Half a year later, Zhou Xuanji finally developed a sword soul for the white crane sword technique. The so-called sword soul was actually the physical form of the sword intent. It required an extremely strong understanding of the sword Tao and soul power. When the sword soul was still, the essence of the sword technique would appear. When it moved, the full power of the sword technique would be unleashed. Most of the sword arts that had been cultivated to the level of sword soul looked similar, but their lethality and nature were different. It was like a breeze and a strong gale, like water and fire. Detected that the sword owner has successfully cultivated the sword soul. Gotcha started. Ding. The second-generation disciples were also mentors, and each of them had dozens of disciples. Su Yang was already in charge. This guy was the reincarnation of a powerful cultivator indeed. His cultivation had already broken through to astral projection. His revered teacher Xiao Jinghong's cultivation had also improved tremendously under Zhou Xuanji's guidance. As his only disciple, Zhou Xuanji treated him well and gave him 5 colorful celestial fruits. Thinking back to a few decades ago when he was still a child, Xiao Jinghong had helped him a lot. Not only did they have a teacher-disciple relationship, but he had also saved his life. Zhou Xuanji had always remembered this. After I break through to great tribulation scattered immortal, it's time to establish my own sect. Zhou Xuanji thought to himself as he rubbed his chin. In his plan, Emperor Sword Court did not ask for numbers but quality. However, Skyfall was in the territory of the demon race. If he wanted to establish his sect smoothly, he had to meet the powerful demons nearby. If the demon race interfered and no one came to Skyfall, it would become a joke. Along the way, the disciples greeted Zhou Xuanji respectfully when they saw him. Their eyes were filled with extreme fanaticism. In their hearts, Zhou Xuanji was already the most powerful being in the world. Zhou Xuanji walked from the top to the bottom of the mountain and observed each disciple's cultivation. He was very satisfied. At least he did not see anyone slacking off. In the north, snow covered the sky. Diablo, who was dressed in a black robe, walked ahead with a map in his hand. In the vast snowy land, his silhouette looked so tiny. I've been searching for almost 4 years. Why haven't I found it? Diablo was a little frustrated and his expression turned savage. The north of the northern wilderness region was vast. There were cities or tribes for humans and demons, but because of the harsh weather they rarely went out. If someone left alone, they would feel a sense of loneliness, as though they were the only person in the world. But Diablo did not. He only began to doubt the authenticity of this Wuxia map. Come here. Come here. At this moment, a faint voice called out to him, causing the evil king to stop. His expression changed into wild joy. He immediately turned around and dashed toward a certain direction. 100 miles away on a tall mountain, a silhouette stood at the peak and looked into the distance. She wore a white dress that fluttered in the wind. Her face was cold, and although her facial features were exquisite, her eyes were lifeless and gave off a deathly aura. Her silver hair was tied up in a bun. She looked in the direction that Diablo left and said faintly, "The corpse of the most powerful human. Why do you want it so much? You overestimate yourselves. You don't even understand what it means to be the most powerful human." Her tone was filled with murderous intent. The snowstorm behind her transformed into the shape of a phoenix, which let out a long cry. Come, wonderful book house. Chapter 336. Northern Wilderness Region, East Coast. A huge whirlpool appeared on the surface of the sea, and a group of cultivators rose from it. The leader was a bald, burly man named Duan Yogu. He had been to the Violet Demon Palace before, but there was no sign of the colorful celestial tree, which had infuriated him. In order to find the colorful celestial tree, he specially went back and invited the Taoist with the best divination ability. "Taoist, this is the Northern Wilderness region. Come and try." Duan Yogu took out a colorful celestial fruit and handed it to the Taoist in green beside him. The Taoist in green was slightly skinny, and his hair was a mix of black and white. His eyes were like a cheetah's, cold and sharp. He took the colorful celestial fruit, closed his eyes and began divination. The other cultivators looked around cautiously. The overseas region and the northern wilderness region had always been incompatible. If they were discovered, there would be a fierce battle. Duan Yogu looked at the horizon of the northern wilderness region thoughtfully and mumbled, "Why does it feel like the northern wilderness region is not as strict as before?" A long time ago he had been to the northern wilderness region. As soon as he stepped onto the beach to rest, experts from a sacred ground appeared, forcing him to flee in panic. Now he had brought so many people but no one came to stop him. It seemed like the rumors were true. The northern wilderness region had fallen. My king, I can't divine it. I have to enter the northern wilderness region first and understand its fate. Only then can I divine it further. The Taoist in green opened his eyes and shook his head. Duan Yogu was not angry at this as he had expected it. Afterward, the group flew toward the inner regions of the northern wilderness region. Mountains rose and fell and lakes dotted the landscape. The scenery was as beautiful as a painting. Among the mountains there was a group of buildings. There were wooden houses, pavilions, stone houses, palaces, and towers. It was a city in the forest. Many flying beasts sat on top of it and they all looked very divine. This place was called Mountain Abyss Ziggurat, and it was one of the 8 sacred grounds. It guarded the eastern side of the northern wilderness region. The Ziggurat residence was located on a tall mountain, shrouded by clouds and mist. There were 4 cultivators guarding the gate. Inside the residence, the Ziggurat residence, Zheng Junlu, was staring at a crystal ball, which reflected Duan Yogu and the others. Zheng Junlu was in the top 100 of the northern wilderness region. His strength was unfathomable, and he wore a beautiful purple robe, looking noble and imposing. He frowned and murmured, "These people came from overseas. What are their intentions?" He did not send anyone immediately because he could feel that Duan Yogu was very powerful. For thousands of years, the sacred grounds and the demonic Tao had been fighting ceaselessly, and the strength of both sides had been diminishing. Although the Tanhua sect had been defeated, the strength of the 8 great sacred grounds had also decreased significantly, and they had lost many experts. With a flip of his right hand, a brush, ink and white paper appeared on the table. He picked up the brush and began to write. Since the Mountain Abyss Ziggurat was unable to fend off the enemy, he would ask for reinforcements. The war between the human and demon races had just ended, so the 8 great holy lands had to work together to prevent the overseas forces from succeeding. After he finished writing the letter, he sighed and said, "It seems that chaos is really coming. Can the Mountain Abyss Ziggurat really be considered a holy land now?" He was at a loss for the future of Mountain Abyss Ziggurat. If the Mountain Abyss Ziggurat was destroyed in his hands, how would he face his predecessors after he ascended? At the peak of Skyfall, Zhou Xuanji began to break through. The thunderclap sword floated above his head, ready to absorb the heavenly lightning. Everyone stood far away in case they were accidentally injured. Previously, when I broke through to the spirit refinement and great realization stages, it was an ascension tribulation. I wonder what kind of tribulation it will be this time. Daoya old man smiled as he stroked his long beard, looking expectant. Xiao Jinghong asked curiously, "I heard that there was no tribulation when Shi Shinzong ascended. Why is that?" The others listened attentively. If there was a way to avoid the tribulation, they would naturally want to know. Although the tribulation could make one more powerful, it was more of a risk of death. It's different. Shi Shinzong's cultivation and lifespan had already surpassed the limit. He had already passed the ascension tribulation 20,000 years ago, but he wanted to become a great emperor in the mortal realm and did not ascend. Now that he ascended, the heavenly law was more than willing to do so. Why would it send a tribulation to stop him? Daoya old man said as he shook his head. He was deeply moved at the mention of this. Such a powerful cultivator was defeated by his grand disciple. Now even he could not see through Zhou Xuanji. How powerful was this brat? The group came to a realization and looked at Zhou Xuanji again. Boom, thunderclouds gathered, covering the starry sky and darkening the summit. A purple Tai Chi diagram appeared between Zhou Xuanji's brows as he waited for the tribulation to descend. He was using his inner vision to look at his own purple heart. As the breakthrough approached, he felt that the violet demon monarch's heart was not as simple as it seemed. An extremely powerful force was stirring and was about to burst out at any time. Soon, the heavenly lightning descended and was blocked and absorbed by the thunderclap sword. After the tribulation began, the heavenly lightning's aura grew tremendously. Countless bolts of lightning descended wildly, just like the aura of his emperor's thousand-hand sword Buddha, wild and domineering. The thunderclap sword vibrated violently and absorbed the heavenly lightning for Zhou Xuanji. Jiang Shui, Huang Lianxin and the others were worried for him. Could this sword withstand it? At this moment, a gigantic lightning dragon head emerged from the thunderclouds. It was even bigger than the entire Skyfall peak. Before the lightning dragon head, everyone was filled with respect and awe. They opened their mouths wide instinctively. Heaven is jealous. Forbid? A majestic voice came like the furious roar of a celestial god. The voice shook the souls of all humans and demons on Skyfall. Next, the lightning dragon descended from the dark clouds and charged toward Zhou Xuanji. It was as though the sky was collapsing. Its divine might was unstoppable. In a stone pavilion on the Green Mountain, Dao Seeker and the man in the woven rush raincoat were drinking wine. Heaven has changed again. Did you divine it? Dao Seeker asked. He swirled the wine cup in his right hand and stared at the man in the woven rush raincoat. The man in the woven rush raincoat was silent for a while before sighing, I can no longer control him. He was referring to Yang Di, of course. Dao Seeker's face turned dark. How can that guy overestimate himself? He thinks he can do whatever he wants just because he's the top cultivator in the world? Who's Lu Wuji? He's the most powerful being in the history of the Northern Wilderness region. Even if his soul ascended, how can he touch his body? The man in the woven rush raincoat was speechless. He was furious too, but there was nothing he could do. Tribulation executives could not attack ordinary people. Otherwise, they would be breaking the rules and would be punished by the heavenly might. Also, more and more people from overseas are entering the Northern Wilderness region. The world epic might be related to overseas. Dao Seeker's face softened and changed the topic. The man in the woven rush raincoat asked, You mean that the next main character of the world will come from overseas? Dao Seeker nodded. Although the two were tribulation executives and did not meddle in worldly affairs, they came from the human race and naturally did not want the human race to be destroyed. If Yang Di and Zhou Xuanji worked together, they might be able to protect the Northern Wilderness region. Right now, the Northern Wilderness region is not as powerful as overseas. There are many geniuses from overseas. I hope you can tell Yang Di about this, Dao Seeker continued, but the man in the woven rush raincoat shook his head. With Yang Di's pride, would he work together with Zhou Xuanji? The two did not speak further and drank wine quietly. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 337. Sword owner has reached the first tribulation bodiless celestial stage. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner has obtained Intimidating Spirit, True Lord Xianxing Sword, Ground Shrinking. The sword spirit's voice sounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind. He was looking up at the thunderclap sword above his head. The thunderclap sword was surrounded by countless bolts of lightning. It was like a sun shining with intense light. The thunderclouds began to disperse, but his cultivation was still growing. A first tribulation loose immortal. He had finally surpassed the Mahayana realm and was no longer immortal. The spiritual energy in his body was transforming. After surpassing the Mahayana realm, spiritual energy would become stronger magic energy. Magic power was purer than spiritual power, and its lethality was also stronger. It was equivalent to the evolved version of spiritual power. Dong dong. Dong dong. His heartbeat was extremely powerful, like the birth of heaven and earth. Even Jiang Shui, Xiao Jinghong and the others in the distance could hear it. They looked at each other and saw the doubt in each other's eyes. Is that Master's heartbeat? Looks like Master's physical body has already reached an extremely ridiculous level. Body cultivators can be this strong? He really succeeded in transcending the tribulation. The heavenly might just now was so terrifying, but it was actually blocked by a sword. That sword is also transforming. Everyone discussed in low voices, their voices filled with amazement. Zhou Xuanji adjusted the rampaging magic energy in his body while he asked the sword spirit to display the information of True Lord Xianxing Sword. Sword name, True Lord Xianxing Sword grade, Intimidating Spirit, description, a sword forged from True Lord Xianxing's soul. It contains True Lord Xianxing's power. Immortal Xianxing? Zhou Xuanji blinked. He seemed to remember that Erlang Shin's other title was True Lord Xianxing. He didn't think too much about it. After all, the Supreme Legendary Sword System was a simulation of a plug-in software that he had created. It wasn't hard to understand why True Lord Xianxing would appear in that Xianxia game. Of course, it was also possible that perfected Lord Xianxing really existed. Although the Supreme Legendary Sword System created its own legendary swords, sword techniques and divine powers, it had absorbed many things in the process of descending into the Northern Wilderness region. For example, the 9 souls of the ancient God Sword. For example, the Great Hell God-slaying formation. Now, with the addition of the Intimidating Spirit Sword and the breakthrough in his cultivation, he suddenly wanted to challenge Yang Di immediately. But on second thought he felt that it was unnecessary. Ever since he defeated the Sword Sage in the eyes of the world, he was on par with Sunlight Emperor. He needed to defeat Sunlight Emperor in a grand scene. It was the World Millennium Duel. Next, it was time for him to prepare for the establishment of the sect. As he pondered, he sheathed the Thunderclap sword. It was time for the Thunderclap sword to level up. With such a powerful heavenly tribulation, there should be hope for it to break through to the heavenly soul stage. He continued to adjust his magic power. An hour later, he got up and gathered everyone together. It's about time to decide on the matter of the founding of the sect. Let's set the time for today 1 year from now. Next, you will begin organizing the disciples to build the houses and prepare for the various matters of the founding of the sect. The matter of the invitations cannot be delayed. Once you are done, hand them over to me and I will go through them one by one. Send them out in a month. Zhou Xuanji said. Over these years, Skyfall had been under construction for the sake of establishing a new sect. Daoya Old Man had even prepared the fate sacrifice ceremony. Zhou Xiaoqi was a fire Qilin, and Qilins were the auspicious beasts of heaven and earth. They inherited the fate of heaven and earth, so having him as the sect's guardian divine beast couldn't be better. Once it succeeded, its cultivation would soar, and it would be connected to Emperor Sword Court's fate. Even if it did not cultivate, it would be able to quickly become stronger. This made the little black snake, Big and Small Air extremely envious. It was a pity that they were not qualified to be the sect's guardian divine beast. Master, then shouldn't you and Xiao Shue's wedding date be set? Huang Lianxin asked with a smile. As she spoke, she nudged Jiang Shui with her elbow. Jiang Shue's pretty face blushed immediately. She did not lower her head but stared at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji smiled gently at her and said, I said it before. The day of the founding of the sect is the day of our wedding. The group had no objections and all cheered. Will Xian Xianghua interfere? The little black snake cried out. Jiang Shui threw him a stare and snorted, Do you think everyone is like you with a dark mind? The little black snake felt wronged. How am I a dark mind? Zhou Xuanji gave a few more instructions before asking the group to spread the news so that all the disciples could be prepared. Fu Hao advanced swiftly amidst the falling snow. He wore a thick fur robe and darted across the snowy ground as he looked around. He had been in the north for 2 years but he still had no clue. Not to mention Lu Wuji's cave abode, even the villages and cities that he passed by along the way did not know Lu Wuji's name. His mood was like the ancient Diablo back then. He became restless. Come here. Come here. At this moment, a faint voice came into his ears, which shocked him so much that he stopped immediately. Next, a voice that only he could hear came into his ears. Are you looking for me? Come here. As long as you find me, I, Lu Wuji's inheritance, will belong to you. You will inherit my mantle and become the most powerful human. The voice was indifferent and majestic, with a domineering aura that made people worship him. Fu Hao was pleasantly surprised and immediately dashed toward the direction of the voice. After traveling for tens of thousands of miles, he came to a cliff. This was a canyon that cut across the land of ice and snow. It was unfathomably deep and it was pitch black below. He could not even see his fingers in front of him. It was like an abyss. Fu Hao jumped down without hesitation. After he landed, the surrounding walls were glowing with a green light, which allowed him to see the path under his feet. He continued forward and found a cave to enter. After entering the cave, he still maintained an extremely fast speed. Along the way he encountered many complicated tunnels. If not for Lu Wuji's guidance, he would have gotten lost easily. Half an hour later, he flew out of the cave and came to a dark underground space. As soon as he landed, his body stopped. In an instant he trembled and woke up. What's going on? Why am I here? Fu Hao was drenched in cold sweat. He glanced out of the corner of his eye and was shocked to find another person standing next to him. Evil King. Why are you here? He asked in shock. He wanted to move, but his body seemed to have been immobilized and he couldn't move at all. Evil King asked expressionlessly, Do you know me? He was also frightened and depressed. He had been here for 2 months. He had been standing for 2 months. Only God knew how he spent this time. Fu Hao did not answer and looked forward. There was a wooden coffin 10 meters away, leaning against the mountain wall. There were all kinds of runes on the coffin's lid, and there were also several thick chains that fixed it firmly. There were many white bones lying around them. There were humans and demons and they were all wearing clothes. They died in a strange way which made one's scalp tingle. What's going on? Fu Hao mumbled to himself and a chill ran down his spine. The heretic king sighed and said, "We've been tricked by Lu Wuji's trick and have been lured here. He will absorb our essence energy until we die." Fu Hao's eyes widened and he asked in shock, "Isn't Lu Wuji dead?" Evil King answered faintly, "He is indeed dead, but his body actually gave birth to a consciousness. He wants to be resurrected." Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 338. A dead body gaining consciousness and wanting to be resurrected? Fu Hao swallowed his saliva and his scalp went numb. He had seen many resurrections. However, it was too bizarre for a corpse to come back to life on its own. He began to think of a way to break free. He did not want to die here. He glanced at the evil king and asked, "Can his consciousness hear us?" The evil king replied, "No, he just used his subconscious to lure us over. It's like an instinct. The will of his dead body hasn't really formed yet, so he can't think independently." He couldn't escape alone. Now that Fu Hao was here, he naturally had to exchange information. He was a little curious. Who was this person? Fu Hao rolled his eyes and said, "Can't you ask for help? If you ask Xian Xianghua to help you, we might be able to escape." Evil King did not answer. What if he harmed Xian Xianghua as well? Perhaps Xian Xianghua's arrival would speed up Lu Wuji's revival. Without getting a reply, Fu Hao had to think of another way. Ka 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 ka. At this moment, a sound came from the wooden coffin, startling Fu Hao and Evil King. A chill spread through the cave. Fu Hao asked cautiously, "Are you sure he doesn't have an independent consciousness?" Evil King also hesitated. If Lu Wuji's corpse already had its own will, then wouldn't it have heard everything he had said in the past 2 months? What was even more frightening was that this fellow didn't answer him. 1 month later. A major piece of news shook the entire northern wilderness region. Zhou Xuanji wanted to establish a sect in Skyfall and invited all heroes to be his guests. The 8 great sacred grounds and the 7 great dynasties received the invitation immediately. The Sword Emperor is finally going to establish his own sect. Skyfall is so far away, and it's in the demon race's territory. How do we get there? I must go and take a look. Even if I can't enter the sect, I must witness the might of the Sword Emperor. This is a good opportunity to establish a relationship with the Sword Sovereign. I've always wanted to go to Skyfall. I finally have the chance. Is it possible for Emperor Sword Court to become a sanctum? All sorts of voices sounded out across the northern wilderness region. News of Zhou Xuanji establishing a sect spread across the entire northern wilderness region very quickly. It was just like how Sunlight Emperor claimed to establish the Great Fate Empire. Although there was still a year to go, many cultivators were already preparing to head to Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji's battle with the Sword Saint had opened the door to the way of the sword, and more people wanted to learn the sword. On this day, Zhou Xuanji left Skyfall and prepared to visit the various demon kings. The top 10 demons of the northern wilderness top 100 had all been killed by him. No other demon would dare to disrespect him. As soon as he announced his name, the demons trembled and made way for him. They even invited their kings to come out. Within 3 months, Zhou Xuanji had visited all of the powerful demon kings in the southern part of the northern wilderness region. None of the demon kings did not appreciate his kindness and treated him with great respect. They promised that they would not affect the establishment of Emperor Sword Court. Zhou Xuanji only had to worry about the distance between the human race and Skyfall. He could not be bothered with the demons on the east and west sides. The territorial awareness between the demon race was far greater than that of the human race. After visiting the demons, he went to the Great Zhou dynasty. In front of a lake, Qiu Bailey was telling the story of Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji to a group of children. This place was not far from the Hidden Sword sect. The Hidden Sword sect was no longer what it used to be. It was said that a powerful figure asked the emperor to take care of the Hidden Sword sect, which allowed the Hidden Sword sect to obtain many resources and grow tremendously. Qiu Bailey knew who the powerful figure was, but he did not say it out loud. He did not tell the sect that it was all thanks to him. He did not want to drag Zhou Xuanji down. Even though Zhou Xuanji was already the world's second, he had the Tianxia map. Who knew if there would be evil people who could use him as leverage against Qiu Bailey? He had experienced such things many times when he was young, and he had always been traumatized. Now, Zhou Xuanji is only 57 years old and he is already famous across the world. He has surpassed the predecessors in the sword's way and became the Sword Emperor. If you want to learn the sword, you must set him as your goal. Qiu Bailey smiled as he stroked his long beard. He looked amiable. Looking at the group of children who were half the height of a human, He could not help but think of Zhou Xuanji and Jiang Shui back then. Time really flew by. It's so difficult to set him as your goal. My mother told me that the Sword Emperor is the pride of Great Zhou. He is the unprecedented genius and no one can surpass him. An 8 or 9-year-old boy said as he sucked on his finger. He looked lost. The young boy was filled with curiosity about Zhou Xuanji. In recent decades, the newborns grew up listening to Zhou Xuanji's stories, just like how the people of Great Zhou grew up listening to the legends of the Sword Monarch of Great Zhou and Emperor Yan of Zhou. Qiu Bailey shook his head and laughed. These silly children. Just when he was about to speak, a voice came, "Listen to your grandpa Qiu. Without him, there would not be the Sword Emperor today." The children turned around and saw Zhou Xuanji standing by the lake under the sunlight. He looked at them with a smile. Qiu Bailey looked as though he was struck by lightning. His face was full of disbelief. He could not believe his eyes. He quickly got up and rubbed his eyes to make sure that he did not see wrongly. Zhou Xuanji walked over slowly, and the children were stunned by his demeanor. "Big brother is so handsome. Who are you? Wow, when did you appear? Why didn't I see you at the Hidden Sword sect?" The children asked all at once. Because they were afraid of strangers, they all hid behind Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji walked up to Qiu Bailey and bowed with his fist cupped. "Old man, long time no see," he said with a smile. Qiu Bailey was a little stunned. He smiled and said, "Long time no see indeed." Their eyes met. The memories of the past kept replaying in their minds, which made them sigh in amazement. After that, Qiu Bailey asked the children to leave. He and Zhou Xuanji sat under a tree and chatted. This time, Zhou Xuanji came to invite him to Skyfall. How could the opening ceremony of the sect not include this old friend? Of course, he also hoped that Qiu Bailey could join Emperor Sword Court. If it were before, Qiu Bailey might have rejected because he was loyal to the Hidden Sword sect. If he were to tell the sect lord about this, the sect lord might bring the Hidden Sword sect along with him to join Emperor Sword Court. The whole world knew that as long as nothing happened to Zhou Xuanji, Emperor Sword Court would become a sanctum sooner or later. It might even become the most powerful force, because Great Zhou, Great Qin and Great Shang had already announced that they would support Emperor Sword Court. The two chatted for an hour, and Zhou Xuanji left after leaving an invitation letter. He told Qiu Bailey that he would arrange for a team from Great Zhou to pick him up and go to Skyfall together. With Qiu Bailey's power, it would be difficult for him to travel through the demon's territory and reach Skyfall. Looking at the direction in which Zhou Xuanji left, Qiu Bailey got up slowly with a gratified smile on his face. Even though this brat had become the world's second, Qiu Bailey did not become arrogant and neglected him. On the same day, Zhou Xuanji came to the Great Zhou Royal Palace. At this moment, Zhou Qingxin was pacing back and forth in the royal study. He looked anxious. Shitan Changshu stood at the side and smiled bitterly. "Your Majesty, we better ask the Sword Emperor for help or else Great Zhou will face the danger of annihilation." Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 339. Ask the Sword Emperor for help? We would like to, but he is busy establishing his own sect. Wouldn't it be too ungrateful to invite him at this time? Zhou Qingxin said with a frown. His position as the emperor was given to him by Zhou Xuanji. All along there were many voices of dissent in the royal capital. He wanted to prove that he did not need to rely on Zhou Xuanji for everything. He believed that Zhou Xuanji had the same expectations for him. Shitan Changshu felt that it made sense and could only sigh. "What is it? Say it." Zhou Xuanji's voice came suddenly, and the two shuddered in fear. They turned around and saw Zhou Xuanji sitting on a chair in the corner of the imperial study, lightly swaying. Zhou Qingxin walked over in surprise and asked, "Why are you here?" Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "I'm here to visit an old friend. Tell me what's the matter. I will help you settle it." The Great Zhou dynasty was a dynasty after all. How could it be destroyed so easily? Could it be that Sunlight Emperor had come to attack? Zhou Qingxin hesitated, not knowing whether he should say it or not. Shitan Changshu took a step forward and recounted everything that had happened. It turned out that the powerful cultivator from overseas, Duan Yogu, found out that Zhou Xuanji's fate originated from Great Zhou. He brought his subordinates into Great Zhou to investigate and even threatened Zhou Qingxin not to expose their whereabouts, or else they would destroy Great Zhou. Under Duan Yogu's coercion, Zhou Qingxin had no choice but to help them find the five-colored immortal fruit. That day Zhou Xuanji's sword qi had injured Duan Yogu. He guessed that the person who took away the colorful celestial tree was a powerful swordsman. In this world, who else could possess such a powerful sword qi? Other than Zhou Xuanji, it was difficult to find someone else. Duan Yogu had also found out about this, but he did not dare to act recklessly. He wanted to make his move during the opening ceremony. "Where is he?" Zhou Xuanji asked. He did not expect this guy to come to the mainland. Shitan Changsha cupped his fists and said, "Let me bring you there." Zhou Xuanji nodded, and the two of them immediately left the imperial study. 300 miles away from the great Zhou imperial city, Duan Yogu and the others were cultivating in a valley. The green-robed Taoist walked to Duan Yogu and said, "Your Majesty, I foresee misfortune. It's best that we leave this place immediately." "Leave?" Duan Yogu opened his eyes and frowned. "Leave? Where are you going?" He had investigated the Violet Demon Palace for thousands of years and finally found the whereabouts of the five-colored celestial tree. How could he give up just like that? He had already heard that Zhou Xuanji cared a lot about Great Zhou, so Great Zhou was his bargaining chip. Let's leave the Great Zhou dynasty first, then make plans later. He was invited by Duan Yogu at a high price, and he did not want to die in the northern wilderness region. "You're not going anywhere." Zhou Xuanji's voice resounded across the valley. Everyone in the valley got up in shock and looked around vigilantly. Duan Yogu turned around and followed his gaze. He saw Zhou Xuanji standing on a small mountain peak looking down at them. Shitan Changsha stood behind Zhou Xuanji. He pointed at Duan Yogu and said, "It's him. He's the leader. After coming to Great Zhou, he killed many of Great Zhou's citizens." Speaking of this matter, he gritted his teeth. How powerful was the Great Zhou dynasty? How could they be threatened like this? Zhou Xuanji was expressionless. He stared at Duan Yogu and said, "The person you are looking for is me. The five-colored celestial tree is in my hands too." Although the five-colored celestial tree was extremely valuable, this guy still did not give up after so many years. Zhou Xuanji could not understand this. Could it be that the five-colored celestial tree had other uses other than fruits? Duan Yogu got up slowly and took out his tiger-striped blade. "Since you are here, then hand over the five-colored celestial tree. You must have consumed many five-colored celestial fruits. Give the tree to me and it will be considered a good deed. What do you think? I came from overseas and my power is much greater than the Great Zhou Empire. You will not lose out if you form a good deed with me. In the future, when you come overseas, I can guarantee that you will be unhindered in all the sea regions." To make Zhou Xuanji compromise, he had to reveal his power. The green-robed cultivator stared at Zhou Xuanji with a tight frown. He tried his best to divine Zhou Xuanji, but he could not divine any information. "What's going on? Who is he?" The green-robed cultivator was covered in cold sweat. He had lived for tens of thousands of years, and it was his first time encountering someone he could not divine. He backed off quietly and kept his distance from Duan Yogu. Zhou Xuanji took out the dog-culling sword and said, "What if I don't hand it over?" The five-colored celestial tree did not belong to Duan Yogu. Why should he hand it over? After merging with the Violet Demon Monarch's heart, the Violet Demon Palace was equivalent to his private property. He had no reason to hand over the five-colored celestial tree. Then only death awaits you. Duan Yogu was furious. He leaped up and charged toward Zhou Xuanji. Whenever he thought about Zhou Xuanji forcefully occupying the five-colored celestial tree to cultivate, he was infuriated, as though his beauty was being enjoyed by someone else. Zhou Xuanji immediately gathered the sky-dominating sword soul on his right arm. The sky-dominating sword soul was like a god of war. It was clad in armor and had a muscular upper body. Its face was hideous like a devil's. Facing the aggressive Duan Yogu, Zhou Xuanji swung his sword quickly. Before Shitan Changsha could see the sky-dominating sword soul clearly, he sensed a flash of violet light, which shocked him so much that he closed his eyes instinctively. Duan Yogu's pupils contracted. He raised his blade to block instinctively. In the underground space. Crack, 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 Lu Wuji's wooden coffin trembled more and more violently, as though something was about to break out. Fu Hao and Diablo's hearts were in their throats. "What should we do? We can't just sit here and wait for death." Fu Hao cried out with gritted teeth. He could sense that Lu Wuji's corpse was about to break out of the seal. Once it broke out, they would surely die. Diablo was also terrified. "You ask this king, who should I ask?" he cursed. "If this king knew how to escape, I would have escaped long ago." He was extremely regretful in his heart. Why did he want to take Lu Wuji's inheritance? He was blinded by lard. Rip, a rune on the wooden coffin broke suddenly, followed by the other runes. Fu Hao and Diablo's hearts were in their throats. "My life is over," Diablo sighed. It was not easy for him to come back to life, but he was going to die again. It was terrible. Fu Hao cursed Yang Di in his heart. If not for Yang Di, why would he take the risk? Boom! The entire underground space began to tremble. Countless rocks and sand slid down. The aura of death was already approaching the two. At this moment, a white figure suddenly darted in from the cave entrance. It was the silver-haired lady in white who was staring at Diablo. Fu Hao and Diablo opened their eyes wide. They were pleasantly surprised, like a drowning man who saw a life-saving straw. They were about to speak when the lady in white exclaimed, "How is it possible? He is going to break out of the seal." After saying that, the lady in white turned around and turned into a white light. She quickly entered the cave. She escaped again. Fu Hao and Diablo's eyes were filled with despair. Was there something wrong with this lady? There was a loud bang. The lid of the coffin flew and hit Fu Hao's face. He was smashed into the cave and his body was embedded into the wall. After Fu Hao landed on the ground, he was surprised to find that he could move again. He was wild with joy. He shouted to Diablo, "Ha! Ignorant kid. Just wait for your death." After saying that, he turned around and fled. Diablo was so angry that he cursed his ancestors. Come. WonderfulBookhouse.com. Chapter 340. Fu Hao shuttled swiftly through the tunnel with all his might. He wished he could grow another pair of wings. The fear that Lu Wuji brought him was too great. He had not felt such fear for a long time. Even when Yang Di wanted to kill him, he did not feel such fear. Soon he leaped out of the ground and dashed toward the inland. Only by leaving this snowy land could he feel safe. Bomb! Just when he was sprinting at full speed, his abdomen was struck by a horrifying force, and he was sent flying back while vomiting blood. His body was forced back while he was moving at high speed, and his body almost exploded. His body rolled along the snowy ground like a ball without slowing down at all. Along the way he smashed through numerous snowy mountains and only stopped after flying for dozens of miles. He could not stop coughing out blood. Gritting his teeth, he opened his eyes and saw two figures levitating above his head, looking down at him. One of them was ancient Diablo. His eyes were lifeless and his neck was broken. His face was facing backward and his death was horrifying. The other person had strips of cloth hanging on his body. His skin was shriveled and he was as thin as a match. His head was hung low, and his white hair was like withered grass. His face was like a skull and his eyes were glowing with a green light. He looked like a beast in the night. Lu Wuji. He breathed heavily and stared at Fu Hao. Seeing him, Fu Hao trembled in fear and said with a trembling voice, "What do you want?" "I need essence qi," Lu Wuji said, panting. Fu Hao heard him and immediately cried out, "I can help you capture him. I can provide you with an endless supply." Smack. Lu Wuji swung his left hand and slapped Fu Hao's face. Next he opened his mouth and began to absorb Fu Hao's essence qi. In the ruined valley, hundreds of cultivators knelt on the ground and trembled. Most of them were injured and looked ahead in fear. Zhou Xuanji stood in front of Duan Yogu, and the dog-culling sword was on Duan Yogu's neck. At this moment, Duan Yogu's arms were severed, and he was covered in blood. He looked extremely miserable. "What sword technique is that?" Duan Yogu asked with gritted teeth. As a third tribulation scattered immortal, he could not even fight back against Zhou Xuanji. The terror of the sword soul made him shudder just thinking about it. Zhou Xuanji smiled and asked, "Do you know the name of the sword in my hand?" After forming the sword soul and breaking through to the great tribulation bodiless immortal realm, his battle prowess skyrocketed. This third tribulation bodiless immortal was so weak in front of him. It seemed that he had underestimated his own strength. "If you dare to kill me when the other sea regions invade the northern wilderness region, my master will not spare you. He will pull out your bones and devour your soul, making you wish you were dead." Duan Yogu looked at Zhou Xuanji furiously and threatened. This guy was quite strong-willed and did not beg for mercy. Zhou Xuanji laughed condescendingly, "This is the dog-culling sword." Duan Yogu's eyes widened. He was so angry that his soul almost left his body. Just when he was about to curse, Zhou Xuanji chopped off his head. Then he used the Qianxia map to absorb the soul. For cultivators of this level, it was not so easy for their souls to enter the cycle of reincarnation after they died. Perhaps there was a chance for them to revive, so Zhou Xuanji left his soul behind. It might be useful in the future. What was worth mentioning was that his cultivation did not improve much even though he had absorbed all of Duan Yogu's dermic powers. After he reached the Great Tribulation scattered immortal realm, The magic power he needed to break through had reached an extremely terrifying level. Just thinking about it gave him a headache. Shitan Changsha stood behind Zhou Xuanji and still had not come back to his senses. The powerful and invincible Duan Yogu had been defeated so quickly. He finally understood why Zhou Xuanji could defeat the Sword Saint. Before he could unleash the famous Emperor's Wei Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha, Duan Yogu had already knelt down. Shitan Changsha smiled bitterly and thought to himself, "Your Majesty, what kind of monster did you give birth to? Don't tell me he's the reincarnation of a supreme god from the upper realm?" Zhou Xuanji turned and asked, "What should we do with these people?" When he had been fighting with Duan Yogu, he had noticed that a cultivator in a green robe had escaped. That person was also a great tribulation scattered immortal, and even if Zhou Xuanji wanted to chase him, he would not be able to catch up. He was not afraid that the cultivator in a green robe would inform him. After all, it was the world epic and he was not afraid of having too many enemies. The more enemies there were, the more powerful they would be, which would help him increase his cultivation. Lock them up first and interrogate them. According to Duan Yogu, the overseas region will invade the northern wilderness region sooner or later. We must make preparations, Shitan Changsha said, and Zhou Xuanji nodded in agreement. He turned around and activated the sealing dream sword formation, sealing the spirit energy of the hundreds of cultivators. The moment the sword formation was activated, the ground shook, and Shitan Changsha was in awe. The second in the world was as powerful as an immortal god. Oh, he might already be the top cultivator in the world. Sun Hill. At the edge of a lake, Yang Di was cultivating while facing the lake. Violet Qi came from the east and surrounded his body. He frowned suddenly and stood up. He looked toward the north with rage in his eyes. "You're dead?" Yang Di mumbled to himself, clenching his fists in his sleeves. Although Fu Hao had ulterior motives, he did not really want to kill him. The two of them depended on each other. Could even be said that he was raised by Fu Hao. As long as Fu Hao did not plot against him, he would not kill him. He did not expect Fu Hao to die in the north. Could it be that someone else is spying on Lu Wuji's cave abode? He fell into deep thought. It was possible that Lu Wuji's cave abode had powerful restrictions, and Fu Hao died because he was careless. He began to hesitate if he should go to the north. His mind was on the Great Fate Empire. If he left now, he might waste more time. At this moment, a man in black appeared behind him and half knelt on the ground. "Great Emperor, I have found the true dragon clan's lair. Should we act?" The man in black asked with cupped fists. Excitement could be seen in his eyes. Capture the true dragon. To establish the Great Fate Empire, a divine beast was needed to maintain its fate. Yang Di set his eyes on the most powerful divine beast, the true dragon. The true dragon clan had not appeared in the northern wilderness region for tens of thousands of years. Many people thought that the true dragon clan had gone extinct, but that was not the case. "Lead the way," Yang Di said. As for Fu Hao's death, he could only put it aside for now. A month later, Zhou Xuanji returned to Skyfall. Just when he landed, Daoya Old Man came up to him immediately. "Bad news. Diablo and Fu Hao are dead. That evil demon has revived." Daoya Old Man said anxiously. He could still divine their life and death. "So soon?" Zhou Xuanji asked with a raised brow. He thought that he would have to wait for a few years or even decades or even centuries. "I'm afraid that the establishment of the sect will be affected." "Should we?" Daoya Old Man asked. Zhou Xuanji heard him and rejected him decisively. This matter had already been decided and the whole world knew about it. If it was delayed, Emperor Sword Court's reputation would suffer a great setback before it even started. Seeing Daoya Old Man's worried face, Zhou Xuanji comforted him. "Skyfall is very far from the north. If something happens, it will be the 8 sanctums. What are you afraid of?" He had no enmity with that peerless evil demon. How could he be fearful? Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 341. Daoya Old Man had been frightened by the divination last time. After Zhou Xuanji's persuasion, he calmed down and understood that he was overly worried. After comforting him, Zhou Xuanji found Jiang Shui and told her about his encounter with Qiu Bailey. Jiang Shui lamented, 50 years have passed without me noticing. For many mortals, 50 years was a lifetime. Ever since they escaped from Green River Village, it was Qiu Bailey who had accompanied them for many years. Qiu Bailey could be considered as their first master in their lives. He taught Jiang Shui spells and taught Zhou Xuanji many principles of the northern wilderness region. If not for Qiu Bailey, perhaps the two of them would have had a different ending. Actually, we can take in the Hidden Sword sect as a subsidiary force and let them become the bridge between us and the Zhou dynasty. Jiang Shui suggested. She was moved when she heard Qiu Bailey telling the children about Zhou Xuanji's legend. There was a kind of indescribable warmth. Zhou Xuanji had boasted in front of Qiu Bailey before, saying that he would become famous across the world. Qiu Bailey would always laugh and say that he could surely do it. Now Zhou Xuanji had done it and he was promoting it. This feeling was similar to an inheritance. Looks like we have a tacit understanding. Zhou Xuanji hooked her nose and smiled. Jiang Shui hugged his arm and giggled. Do you think we should have a baby earlier? This way he can ascend with us. If it's too late and he's left alone in the mortal world, won't he be lonely? The two of them were already engaged, so naturally she would think about the future. Zhou Xuanji chuckled. Not him, it's them. Jiang Shui rolled her eyes at him. The two of them walked to the edge of the cliff and started talking about the conversation between lovers. 2 hours later, Jiang Shui walked to a place not far away and sat down to cultivate. Zhou Xuanji stood where he was and thought to himself. The deaths of Fu Hao and the evil king made him suspicious. In his heart, the two of them were villains. How could they die just like that? This was especially so for the evil king. He was someone who fought against the great emperor 10,000 years ago. How long had it been since he was revived? The world did not know that he had been resurrected and he had died again? How aggrieved was that? However, this also told him that reality was crueler than he had imagined. No matter how powerful a person was, they could still die in vain and without a sound. He suddenly thought of someone. He immediately got up and left. At the foot of Skyfall, the Thunder Demon sovereign of the Haotian sect, Zhang Quanglan, was chopping wood. He had been enslaved by Zhou Xuanji for decades. Because his cultivation was sealed, he was like an ordinary person. However, he was deeply loved by the third-generation disciples. This was because he could always talk about legends that his disciples had never heard of. Zhang Quanglan was dressed like a farmer. He was thinking while chopping wood. Why am I used to my current life? I'm the Thunder Devil Lord, I have to revitalize the Haotian sect. His fighting spirit burned in his heart, but when he thought of the hardships he had gone through in the past 10,000 years, he suddenly felt that the present was pretty good. Zhou Xuanji was right. What should exist would always exist, and what should not exist, no matter how much one tried to force it, it would vanish into the world. He alone could not revitalize the Haotian sect. Haoqi Alliance and Xinhao sect were already independent. They seemed to respect him, but they never really wanted to rebuild Haotian sect. Rather than that, he might as well enjoy the moment. It was quite interesting to brag to the third-generation disciples every day. Of course, this was all he could do. He could not escape from Zhou Xuanji's clutches. I want to ask you about something. Zhou Xuanji's voice suddenly came. He turned and saw Zhou Xuanji sitting on a wooden chair not too far away. He put down his axe and wiped his sweat as he asked, "What is it?" Now it was already quite good for him to see Zhou Xuanji once a month. Every time he saw Zhou Xuanji he would feel quite complicated. This boy could even defeat the Sword Saint. He was even more powerful than the Haotian sect's founding ancestor. Is there a demon suppressed in the north? A demon that can kill the Diablo? Zhou Xuanji asked. Zhang Quanglan was much older than Daoya. Old man Zhang Quanglan was stunned and frowned as he asked, "Demon? There are many demons suppressed in the north. Because of the climate, it has been a sealed and buried place since ancient times. However, a demon that can kill the Diablo. The ancient Diablo was so powerful that even the Hegemon Sword Emperor acknowledged his talent. It would be very difficult to kill him." Wait. Zhang Quanglan suddenly thought of something. His eyes widened and his breathing became ragged. Impossible. Impossible? He shook his head and muttered to himself, a look of terror on his face. Zhou Xuanji frowned. It was the first time he had seen Zhang Quanglan so afraid. "Just what is it? Tell me." Zhou Xuanji said in a low voice, causing Zhang Quanglan to tremble. He hurriedly replied, "The human race is the most powerful. Lu Wuji. His corpse was suppressed in the north and 50,000 years ago he broke out of the seal. If it wasn't for Devil Emperor Dugu suppressing him, the entire northern wilderness would have been slaughtered by him. Right now there is no one as amazing as Devil Emperor Dugu. If it really is Lu Wuji, it's over." He sat paralyzed on the ground, sinking into extreme terror. Lu Wuji? Zhou Xuanji's expression was quite strange. He asked, "Apart from Lu Wuji, is there anyone else?" Zhang Quanglan shook his head and said, "The Diablo has many tricks up his sleeves, and even the Hegemon Sword Emperor found it difficult to kill him before he verified his Tao. Apart from Lu Wuji, no other demon can kill the Diablo. Zhou Xuanji got up and walked over to Zhang Quanglan, helping him up. Don't be afraid. Even though there is no Devil Emperor Dugu, there is still me. As long as I am here, you will not die. With that, he disappeared into thin air. Zhang Quanglan was dazed. These words reminded him of his master, the former Haotian sect master. Zhou Xuanji came to an empty cave and took out the ancient god sword. The ancient god sword's 9 souls had all awakened. The 9th soul was Mystic Venerable One. According to what the sword spirit had said, if he fused the 9 souls, the ancient god sword would level up. However, he felt that the 9 souls had other uses, so he did not fuse them. He summoned the 9 souls and asked, Lu Wuji, I have something to ask you. Don't play dead. Ever since he became a great tribulation scattered immortal, he realized that the 9 souls still had their own consciousness, but they didn't like to talk to him. Lu Wuji didn't say anything, but the other souls did. Tiske, daring to speak to Lu Wuji like that, the younger generation will surpass us in time. Ever since this kid became a great tribulation itinerant immortal, he has become more and more arrogant. Lu Wuji, I asked you a question. Aha, don't play dead. He's really dead. He's not pretending. Zhou Xuanji ignored the mockery of the other souls and looked at Lu Wuji's soul. Looking at its soul, it was completely different from the white-haired evil demon that Jiang Shui had predicted. But their heights were similar. He had most likely become thinner. Lu Wuji did not reply, so Zhou Xuanji took the initiative to tell him about what had happened in the north. After he spoke, Emperor Zhao said in amazement, Why do descendants always like to seek death? The human race's most powerful is not just for show. Even if it's just their fleshly bodies, they are undying and indestructible existences. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 342. Lu Wuji remained silent, making Zhou Xuanji feel a bit impatient. Don't you want to be resurrected? If I'm killed by your body, you'll die too. Zhou Xuanji coldly harumphed. If he died, the ancient god sword's soul would automatically perish. Of course, he did not think that he would die. Right now he was very strong. Venerable Xian said, He doesn't have the face to say that he didn't want to give up his body. Could the strongest of the human race be threatened? Zhou Xuanji felt quite curious, and just as he was about to ask, Lu Wuji began to speak. Sai, after I ascended, I calculated this karma, but I can't go down to the lower realms. I can only use my divine will to find an inheritor to guard my physical body. However, there are always people who will do anything for power. His tone was gloomy and complicated. Who would want their body to be coveted by others? Even if it was a dead body. Why don't you guess how strong your body is now? Zhou Xuanji asked. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. I'm not sure. After all, that fleshly body has been separated from me for more than 100,000 years. Even though the cultivation of the dead body has declined, at the very least, it has the strength of a 7th tribulation scattered immortal. If it had absorbed the essence, its strength would have increased. Lu Wuji hesitated. Even he wasn't sure. 7th tribulation bodiless immortal. Zhou Xuanji's eyelids twitched. This was power that could kill the heavens with a single palm strike. Moreover, since that guy ran out 50,000 years ago, he was definitely not just a 7th tribulation scattered immortal. He quickly asked, Can you control him? Lu Wuji sighed, I'm just a remnant soul right now, and my soul's power isn't enough. Otherwise, this ancient god sword would be even stronger. That was right. If he could control the body of a 7th tribulation scattered immortal, the ancient god sword would probably surpass the intimidating spirit grade. Zhou Xuanji felt a headache. How should he deal with Lu Wuji's body? Emperor Zhao chuckled and said, Don't worry too much. Although Lu Wuji is known as the strongest of the human race, that is only limited to the human race. Moreover, it's just a corpse. If he wants to slaughter the entire human world, dream on. Lu Wuji snorted coldly. Zhou Xuanji asked with narrowed eyes, You mean that there are other powerful cultivators hidden in the northern wilderness region? He thought of Bai Hao Yisan. If even the heartless great emperor could reincarnate, there might be other great emperors in hiding. There are always some people who can't survive in the upper realm, so they hide in the mortal world. Emperor Zhao said casually. This guy's tone always carried a hint of mockery like a playboy. However, Zhou Xuanji did not underestimate him because this fellow was an emperor. He was also the only human emperor who had conquered the ocean. After becoming a great emperor and ascending, he left behind many legends. Many temples and ancestral halls in the northern wilderness region had statues of him. Emperor Songhai suddenly said, "Don't worry. There are many hidden races in the ocean. If you can't defeat them, you can go to the ocean. As long as you don't say that you are from the northern wilderness region, it will be easy for you to hide." Ocean. Zhou Xuanji frowned. Emperor Zhao said disdainfully, "They're all just fellows who hide their heads and show their tails, avoiding the might of our human race." Emperor Songhai was not angry, nor did he respond. Zhou Xuanji asked a few more questions before preparing to sheath his sword. "If you don't have confidence, you can go to Juadi Cliff. I've hidden a treasure there. When the time comes, I'll take you to find it and use it to deal with Lu Wuji. I've always regretted not being able to fight with the strongest human in the mortal world. Finally, I have the chance." Emperor Zhao once again spoke with a smile, sounding quite excited. Even though this fellow was quite talkative, he was very domineering and was not inferior to the cold and arrogant Lu Wuji at all. Lu Wuji did not reply. No one knew if it was because he was scared or because he disdained to reply. Zhou Xuanji said, "Very well." After saying this, he put away the ancient god sword and returned to the summit to continue cultivating. Talking to the 9 souls did not make him feel at ease and instead made him feel even more worried. Demons that surpassed 7th tribulation scattered immortals. And peerless powerhouses that were hidden in the world. He suddenly felt that he and Yang Di were a joke. There was always someone more powerful than you in the world. This was never a joke. Interesting, this is good. The more ancient experts there are, the more challenging it will be. Zhou Xuanji smirked. The worry in his heart turned into excitement and flowed through his bones and tendons. He sat down at the edge of the cliff and started to cultivate. News of Lu Wuji's revival had not spread through the northern wilderness yet, and the world was still talking about Zhou Xuanji establishing a sect. This was the most important thing for him right now. Within a Taoist temple, Feng Qiu was reading an ancient book. The fragrance of sandalwood floated in the air, making one feel relaxed and relaxed. Apart from him, there was no one else in the temple, and the roars of demons could occasionally be heard from outside. At that moment, a figure walked into the Taoist temple. Feng Qiu looked over and his expression slightly changed as he asked in a low voice, "Who are you, sir?" The person who came was Bai Hao Yisan. He wore elegant white clothes and held a paper fan in his hand as he smiled and said, "I heard that apart from tribulation executives, you are the person with the greatest attainments in the way of karma. This emperor wants to take you in and give you the opportunity to become a great emperor in the future." Feng Qiu's expression changed and he narrowed his eyes as he asked, "You are Great Emperor Heartless? The only living great emperor of this generation." No matter how calm he looked, his heart was greatly shaken. Bai Hao Yisan slowly walked over to him and looked around as he said, "Ever since I reincarnated, I've always encountered trouble, making this emperor very annoyed. Those fellows think that just because this emperor has reincarnated, they can bully this emperor as they please. They don't know that becoming a great emperor is not just about cultivation talent." He placed his hands on the table and leaned forwards as he looked at Feng Qiu. His gaze was filled with aggressiveness and was filled with extreme arrogance. "If you work for this emperor will give you whatever you want. Even those 2 tribulation executives who look down on you will be stepped on by you." Feng Qiu's heart rate sped up, but he did not panic. He asked in a low voice, "Why should I believe you?" Great Emperor Heartless had reincarnated for decades and was like a joke, so Feng Qiu had to be cautious. Bai Hao Yisan's lips curled up as he said, "This emperor left behind a divine weapon and an army." Feng Qiu's eyes widened. Could it be that Great Emperor Heartless had been preparing for something 90,000 years ago? Lu Wuji's body has already been revived. "If you don't rely on this emperor, you're dead for sure," Bai Hao Yisan said as he smiled. Bai Hao Yisan said as he grinned. His words caused Feng Qiu's expression to change greatly. "Do you know who Lu Wuji is? If you don't, then this emperor can tell you that his cultivation in the mortal world was at a height that no existence in the mortal world could reach. He was viewed as the most powerful person in the human race, and after ascending he was extremely powerful in the higher realm." Lu Wuji. Feng Qiu knew about that legend and his face became pale. He did his best to calm himself down. At the same time, ambition welled up in his heart. This was his fortuitous opportunity. He closed the book and stood up as he asked, "Great Emperor, what do you need me to do for you?" Bai Hao Yisan loudly laughed, feeling incredibly carefree. Feng Qiu suppressed his excitement and waited for his orders. Bai Hao Yisan rubbed his hands together as he chuckled and asked, "This emperor needs you to do many things. First, which single woman is the most beautiful in the world?" Feng Qiu's eyes widened, and he almost cursed inwardly. The hot-bloodedness in his heart instantly disappeared, and he felt that everything was tasteless. Chapter 343. In the blink of an eye, there was only a month left before the official opening of Emperor Sword Court. Many cultivators were already gathering around Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji did not allow them to enter the mountain, so they could only find a place to stay nearby. During this period, Zhou Xuanji celebrated his 58th birthday and received 3 legendary swords, all of which were amethyst grade. They were the Divine Martial Sword, Towering Sword, and Seeking Phoenix Sword. At this moment at the peak of Skyfall, Zhou Xuanji gathered his trusted followers to discuss the disciple assessment. If the threshold was too low, there would be too many disciples. If the threshold was too high, it would ruin the talents. Why don't we take in some odd job disciples first? If they are talented, we can promote them to official disciples. This way it will be more convenient for the opening ceremony, Ning Zifeng suggested. Every sect overseas had odd job disciples, and the number of them far exceeded official disciples. This way they could take care of every disciple. Zhou Xuanji felt that it was a good idea, so he began to discuss the treatment of odd job disciples and official disciples. Finally, they divided the disciples into legendary sword disciples, core disciples, elite disciples, ordinary disciples, and odd job disciples. Those who reached great realization and comprehended 2 sword wills would become legendary sword disciples. Those who reached astral projection and comprehended 2 sword wills would become core disciples. As long as they comprehended 2 sword wills, they could become elite disciples straight away. Disciples of different levels would receive different amounts of cultivation resources each month. Zhou Xuanji opened the 10,000 Swords House to distribute swords and cultivation resources. Huang Lianxin and Daoya Old Man were in charge of it. Lin Chang'e and Xiao Jinghong were in charge of purchasing swords of different grades from the humans. After that, he put Han Shenbua and Ning Zifeng in charge of the Xuanji Sword Library. He would record down all the sword techniques he knew and put them in the library. What was worth mentioning was that the Xuanji Sword Library and 10,000 Swords House were already completed. Yesterday they had already selected suitable disciples and were waiting to take up their posts. Other than that, he was going to name the Punishment Hall, Law Enforcement Hall, and other departments. He had already thought about the personnel arrangements. If not for the solid foundation he had built over the years, it would be too difficult to establish a sect. Even so, Emperor Sword Court would be emptied in less than 20 years. On the opening day, the guests will not come empty-handed. Daoya Old Man stroked his beard and smiled like a sly old fox. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, "In the future for the Divine Sword Palace's missions, we will first take half of the deposit, after which the disciples will receive it and complete it. After completing it, the employer will pay the remaining half. Remember, every mission must be carefully evaluated to determine the authenticity and level of the mission. We cannot accept unjust missions." This matter was extremely important as it concerned the future development and image of Emperor Sword Court. Finally, Zhou Xuanji put Lin Chang'e and Chongming Demon Monarch in charge. Lin Chang'e was in charge of the human race's mission registration and investigation, while Chongming Demon Monarch was in charge of the demon race. Zhou Xuanji said thoughtfully, "And the intelligence organization, we cannot neglect it. When the time comes, we will choose from odd job disciples and ordinary disciples. Of course, elite disciples and core disciples can also join. After joining the intelligence organization, they must have their own code names." He named the intelligence organization the Firmament Net, and its treatment was better than that of the ordinary disciples. If they did a good job, they would be rewarded. Everyone sighed inwardly as they listened. Zhou Xuanji had thought through all of Emperor Sword Court's details, and many of his ideas shocked them. According to his plan, Emperor Sword Court could become a top-tier faction in a few hundred years. For other sects, reputation was the most important thing. But for Zhou Xuanji, reputation was what he had the most. After he made the arrangements, he ordered everyone to get busy. Each pavilion and palace had to choose their second and third generation disciples within 7 days. Zhou Xuanji asked Fenyu Dragon King to stay. "In the future you will continue to guard Skyfall. Don't always sleep in. If enemies sneak into Skyfall, you must keep a close eye on it," Zhou Xuanji said seriously. Fenyu Dragon King was a little embarrassed, but he still nodded resolutely. This guy spent all his time in Skyfall's lava and always slept soundly. He was really lazy. Skyfall is ahead. In the forest, a group of carriages was moving forward. The soldier leading the way turned around and shouted. Chiu Bailey, who was sitting on his flying sword, looked up. Skyfall was shrouded in clouds and was even more majestic than he had imagined. Even though he was dozens of miles away, he was still shocked. Zhou Xuanji could occupy such a majestic mountain, which showed how powerful he was. Zhou Qingxin sat on the dragon horse, which had the bloodline of a dragon. It had a horse's body, a dragon's tail and dragon's horns. Its hooves were ablaze with flames, and its shoulders were 6 meters tall. When it moved, it looked extremely majestic. He was also immersed in the beauty of Skyfall. Great Zhou's team had 500 people. The soldiers were carefully selected, and even the weakest was at Soul Fountain. Along the way, they did not encounter any demons that made things difficult for them. Great Zhou's flag was enough to scare away all the demons. Who did not know that the Sword Emperor came from Great Zhou? Your Majesty, how tall do you think Skyfall is? Princess Xuanya, who was sitting on a banana leaf, flew over and asked. Even she wanted to live in Skyfall. The spiritual qi in this area was dense, and the spiritual qi on the mountain must be even denser. If she cultivated here, wouldn't she improve tremendously? Zhou Qingxin shook his head and said, no one knows. Standing on the peak, one can touch the sky, which is why it's called Skyfall. How tall do you think the sky is? Princess Xuanya opened her mouth wide in shock. Touch the sky? As the day of Emperor Sword Court's opening approached, more and more guests came. Zhou Xuanji and the others had already recruited 20,000 odd-job disciples. These people did not have much talent in the sword's way, but they wanted to join Emperor Sword Court. As such, they were taken in and looked after by the third-generation disciples. The odd-job disciples began to receive the guests. In front of the mountain gate, which was 1,000 meters above the ground, Daoya Old Man and Huang Lianxin were registering the guests. Because there were so many people, the guests had to line up. The line stretched from here to the foot of the mountain, and it was quite a grand sight. This is the territory of the demon race, and yet so many people came. This is the rallying power of the Sword Emperor. I really want to see the Sword Emperor with my own eyes. The Sword Emperor isn't even 60 years old yet, right? Looking at this scene, Emperor Sword Court will be a first-rate faction once it opens. Not just that. With the help of the 3 empires, it won't be a problem for it to become a first-rate faction. The cultivators in the line were not impatient but excited instead. Such a grand occasion was quite rare. In the future they could brag about it to their descendants. People could stay at the waist of Skyfall, but they could not go any higher. No one felt that Zhou Xuanji was being rude. At the foot of the mountain, Chief Monk Xuanhe arrived with a group of monks. Looking at the majestic Skyfall, his expression was complicated as he softly chanted, Amitabha. Emperor Sword Court was already a major power, and his close friend Daoya Old Man was also here. How could he not come? Moreover, he wanted to use this opportunity to find Xian Xianghua's whereabouts. Don't worry, Abbot. With me here, Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xianghua will not be able to do anything to you. There was a black-robed monk behind Chief Monk Xuanhe. He looked young and handsome, but there was an evil aura between his brows. Standing among the Dongyuan Monastery's people in a black kasaya, he was very eye-catching. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 344. Chief Monk Xuanhe glanced at the black-robed monk and said, most of those who died at Zhou Xuanji's hands thought so. Many powerful cultivators felt that Zhou Xuanji was too young to be a threat, but he died a pitiful death. For example, Huangquan Drake King, Nether Ghost, Jihuang Demon Lord, etc. The black-robed monk chuckled, I'm not them. His tone was confident and unquestionable. Xuanhe Divine Monk thought of his fight with him and did not say anything else. The group walked to the stone steps and lined up. They didn't cut the queue because there were many big forces in front of them, and there was no lack of holy lands. Zheng Junlu was also lining up with the Mountain Abyss Ziggurat disciples. Ever since he had seen Zhou Xuanji kill Duan Yogu, he had made up his mind to build a good relationship with Zhou Xuanji. Not only because of Zhou Xuanji's strength but also because of his standpoint. Even though Duan Yogu had revealed his identity, he still acted decisively without hesitation. The northern wilderness region needed such a powerhouse. However, his disciples were dissatisfied. Tower Lord, if we go up directly, Zhou Xuanji will receive us, right? Why are we queuing here? A disciple could not help but ask, causing the other disciples to nod in agreement. Zheng Junlu shook his head and laughed, saying, if they don't line up, how can the people from Skyfall arrange it? I'm setting up a benchmark. Even our mountain abyss ziggurat has to queue up, so how can the other factions go up directly? This is also a gesture of goodwill to Zhou Xuanji. Hearing this, the disciples were enlightened and they admired his way of thinking. Even though the mountain abyss ziggurat was a sanctum, it had been a long time since they had produced one of the top 5 experts in the world. It was not shameful for them to rope in Zhou Xuanji like this. On the summit, Zhou Xuanji did notice this. Daoya old man had introduced the leaders of the 8 sanctums to him, and he had even seen their faces. Moreover, Zheng Junlu's cultivation was at the first tribulation scattered immortal stage. He was so conspicuous at the foot of the mountain, how could he not notice him? Mountain abyss ziggurat? How sensible. Zhou Xuanji smiled satisfactorily before closing his eyes and continuing to cultivate. There was no need for him to personally entertain the guests. He was the second in the world. Who could make him personally receive them? If he appeared, it would damage Emperor Sword Court's reputation. Not too far away, a sacrificial altar had been constructed, and Zhou Xiaoqi was napping lazily on it. He seemed to be extremely satisfied. This was a sacrificial altar that gathered the fate of heaven and earth. There were incense sticks and candles that represented fate in all directions. The stone platform was built with 10,000-year-old stones, and there was also a spirit-gathering formation around it. It attracted the little black snake, the 3-eyed drought rodent, big and small air to stop in their tracks. Once it became a divine beast of providence, Zhou Xiaoqi would soar into the sky. The others were all busy, including Jiang Shui. She was preparing for her marriage and was being served by female disciples. At that moment, a figure appeared behind Zhou Xuanji. It was Xian Xianghua. She wore a flirtatious purple dress, and her face was covered by a veil as usual, revealing only a pair of enchanting eyes that seemed to contain a myriad of amorous feelings, as well as a hint of coldness. You came. Zhou Xuanji said without looking back. Xian Xianghua walked to his side and sat down. She smiled and said, Yo, your strength is really getting stronger and stronger. You discovered me the moment I appeared. She saw through Zhou Xuanji's cultivation at a glance. A first tribulation loose immortal. His magic power was so strong that ordinary second tribulation bodiless immortals could not compare to him. This kid is really something. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and asked, What have you been busy with recently? This old demonic woman had been gone for dozens of years, which made him miss her occasionally. Xian Xianghua smiled coquettishly and said, Of course I'm busy with reviving the Tanhua sect. Why do you miss me a lot? Today you can marry me as well. How about that? You can enjoy the happiness of having multiple partners. Zhou Xuanji was a little moved, but he still refused. Because he knew that this old demonic woman was toying with him. Do you already know about the ancient Diablo? Zhou Xuanji asked. Lu Wuji had told him about the ancient Diablo. Lu Wuji's cultivation was at least 7th tribulation scattered immortal, and he most likely surpassed that. He did not want Xian Xianghua to take such a risk. Xian Xianghua nodded calmly and said, It's good that he's dead. He has no value anyway. Zhou Xuanji looked at her intently and asked, Is that so? If she was just using him, why would Xian Xianghua need a share of the ancient Diablo's colorful celestial fruit? He did not point it out but reminded her, The person who killed the ancient Diablo is very powerful, even more powerful than Yang Di. His cultivation is at least 7th tribulation scattered immortal. I advise you not to act recklessly. 7th tribulation scattered immortal. Xian Xianghua's eyes widened as she said in a low voice, How is that possible? There can't be 7th tribulation scattered immortals in this world. Ordinary cultivators would ascend when they reached 2nd tribulation scattered immortal. If they stayed here, it would be very difficult for their cultivation to progress. How could one cultivate to 7th tribulation scattered immortal in the mortal realm? Zhou Xuanji did not say much, and Xian Xianghua fell into a state of confusion. Her eyes flashed with fear, excitement and curiosity, making it difficult for others to guess what she was thinking. Zhou Xuanji's heart thumped. This old demonic woman had her eyes on Lu Wuji to obtain his power? Others could cultivate to 7th tribulation scattered immortal, so why couldn't she? Xian Xianghua thought to herself. She could already smell the serendipity. The day of the sect's establishment arrived. Hundreds of thousands of people had already moved into Skyfall, and there were millions more at the foot of the mountain. Skyfall had a limited number of houses. Apart from the guests who had received invitations, everyone else could only stay at the foot of the mountain. However, Skyfall would still send disciples to receive them. Today is the day of Emperor Sword Court's establishment, Daoya old man said loudly. In front of the mountain gates, Daoya old man said loudly. All of the second and third generation disciples stood in front of him, looking incredibly excited. Xiao Jinghong, Beixiao Wangjian, Zhao Tsongjian, and the others stood at different places and looked at Daoya old man from afar. Their eyes were filled with anticipation. The founder of the sect is the current sword emperor Zhou Xuanji. He started training with the sword when he was 2 years old and revealed his brilliance before he was 10 years old. He fought his way into the northern wilderness top 100 when he was 20 years old and was ranked second in the world before he was 30 years old. At 50 years old, he defeated the legendary sword saint. Daoya old man introduced Zhou Xuanji with great emotion. His voice resounded throughout the heavens and earth, and even those who were not at Skyfall could hear him. Everyone who heard him felt their blood boil. How could they not have a glorious future by following such a powerful cultivator? A 1,000-hand sword Buddha that was 3,000 meters tall descended from the clouds and looked down at the ground. Zhou Xuanji stood on its head looking like a descending god. Daoya old man was still speaking, but everyone's gaze was attracted by the 1,000-hand sword Buddha. Such a domineering golden Buddha. This is the foundation of Emperor Sword Court's establishment. To support the world with the sword and save the world with the sword. Daoya old man said the last sentence. Next, all of the second and third generation disciples drew their swords and pointed them at the sky. The sound of their swords being unsheathed gathered together and shook everyone's hearts. To support the world with the sword and save the world with the sword. To support the world with the sword and save the world with the sword. To support the world with the sword and save the world with the sword. The disciples shouted together with all their might. Their voices shook the clouds. The guests were all shocked in their hearts. Emperor Sword Court had just been established, but these disciples already had such cohesiveness and morale. Zhou Xuanji's influence was too great. To support the world with the sword and save the world with the sword? With the swords in your hands? Zhou Xuanji, I want to see if you are qualified to do so today. A soft laugh suppressed the disciples' shouts and silenced the heavens and earth. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 345. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice, wanting to see who dared to provoke Zhou Xuanji at such a critical moment. During each sect's grand opening ceremony, they would be oppressed by their enemies. However, Zhou Xuanji was ranked second in the world. Who would dare to do that? The speaker was the black-robed monk from Dongyuan Temple's team. Under everyone's gazes, he took a step forward and looked at Zhou Xuanji, who was high up in the air. He smiled and said, Zhou Xuanji, you obtained the Tianxia map and indeed had great luck. However, if you are too strong you will break easily. You dare to call yourself the most talented person in all of history, don't you think you're a bit too arrogant? Zhou Xuanji glanced at him but did not speak. Regarding the matter of his talent, he did not brag about it to outsiders. This was a title that the world gave him. This fellow wanted to provoke him because of this, but the reason he came up with was too lame. Daoya old man and the disciples of Emperor Sword Court looked coldly at the black-robed monk, revealing mocking smiles. The black-robed monk's face turned cold and he slowly rose up. Wisps of strange black gas emerged and surrounded his body. My ancestor was a great emperor. In terms of talent, no one in this world can compare to me. I've cultivated for nearly 1,000 years and only came out today. I can use your name as a stepping stone to shake the world. He smiled proudly and many people were moved by his words. An ancestor who became a great emperor? This was truly incredible. It was a pity that Zhou Xuanji remained expressionless, making the black-robed monk feel quite angry. There was a feeling of hitting cotton with all his might. Displeased. He stared at Zhou Xuanji and laughed coldly. What? Panicking? Zhou Xuanji, make your move. Today I will defeat you in front of all the heroes in the world. He spread out his arms, and the black gas transformed into a black Buddha figure, like a great Buddha who was possessed by the evil fire. The black Buddha quickly grew taller, wanting to reach the same height as the 1,000-hand sword Buddha. At that moment, the 1,000-hand sword Buddha opened its eyes. Two beams of intense light illuminated the world, causing many people to close their eyes. The 1,000-hand sword Buddha moved. 1,000 arms brandished their swords in unison, and it was as if 1,000 swords had transformed into a single sword. It slashed down with the force of 1,000 caddies, and its momentum was unstoppable. The black-robed monk's eyelids twitched. Just as he was about to block the attack, the black Buddha behind him was slashed apart. Bang! The black-robed monk's body exploded under the huge sword, turning into a bloody mist that dissipated in the air. The sword wind shook Skyfall, causing countless people's hearts to palpitate. Such tyrannical strength. The world was silent. Apart from the Dongyuan Monastery's people, who were completely dumbfounded, no one else felt surprised and only praised Zhou Xuanji for being powerful. And nobody wanted to challenge the Sword Emperor? So what if he was the descendant of a great emperor? He was still not a great emperor. How many descendants of great emperors could become great emperors again? Zhou Xuanji's body shook and disappeared. After a second, he returned to the top of the 1,000-hand sword Buddha's head. If one did not keep a close eye on him, one would think that he had not moved at all. In truth, he had just taken away the black-robed monk's soul. This lad's cultivation had reached second tribulation scattered immortal, and he was no weaker than Huangquan Drake King. Unfortunately, he had chosen the wrong opponent. However, this brat's background was not simple. He could interrogate him and perhaps he could obtain some good information. The grand opening ceremony has officially begun. Rise! Zhou Xuanji roared, and following this, all of Skyfall violently trembled. A draconic roar rang out, and Finyu Dragon King appeared at the foot of the mountain. He transformed into his dragon form, and his body expanded rapidly as he coiled around the mountain. The mighty dragon's body was revealed in front of everyone's eyes, causing them to be dumbfounded. Dragon. Such a powerful dragon's might. Could it be an 8th rank great demon? Not only that. 9th rank. Heavens, apart from Huangquan Drake King, there are other dragons that have reached 9th rank? The Sword Emperor has such a powerful demon under his command. Magma flowed under Finyu Dragon King's scales, giving off a scorching aura. It was like a fog, which was quite shocking. The sea of clouds above shook violently, and another roar sounded out. Compared to Finyu Dragon King's, it sounded much more immature. However, this roar grew louder and more majestic. This is the roar of a Qilin? Someone cried out in shock, causing another commotion. Last time when he fought the Sword Saint, Zhou Xuanji had stepped on a fire Qilin. Could it be that the fire Qilin was not simple? Thinking about it, Zhou Xuanji only lacked the phoenix to gather the leader of the 3 ancient divine beasts. The spiritual qi of the heavens and earth surged toward the top of the mountain. All of the Emperor Sword Court disciples felt as if something was being sucked out of their bodies, but they did not feel any discomfort. Zhou Xiaoqi's roar grew louder and louder until it sounded like thunder, so loud that even the deaf could hear. Chief Monk Xuanhe's expression was unsightly. The black-robed monk's death was a great blow to him. Even he could not defeat the black-robed monk, and the monk was killed by Zhou Xuanji in an instant. Seeing Finyu Dragon King and hearing the fire Qilin's roar, he felt a sense of defeat. He really could not compare to Zhou Xuanji. He suddenly understood why the arrogant Xian Xianghua was so loyal to Zhou Xuanji. Maybe she really admired and liked Zhou Xuanji. He had known Xian Xianghua for a long time, but it was the first time he had seen her treat a man like this. Even Yang Di could not move her heart. Zhou Xuanji did not know what Chief Monk Xuanhe was thinking. He was sensing the fate. A formless fate rose up like a violent gale, and even his fate was sucked upward. The entire court's fate was now flowing into Zhou Xiaoqi's body. Zhou Xiaoqi's body grew at a visible rate. Flames wrapped around his body and he looked majestic. Such powerful fate. As expected of the Sword Emperor. At the foot of the mountain, a middle-aged man praised. His name was Lianyu. He was the Ziggurat Lord of the Canghai Ziggurat, who controlled the world's intelligence. He came to visit Zhou Xuanji today and happened to witness such a grand occasion. The Canghai Ziggurat's disciples behind him looked at him with admiration. No wonder Zhou Xuanji could defeat the Sword Saint. Just this fate alone was enough to compete with Yang Di. At the same time, in the northern part of the northern wilderness region, Lu Wuji, who was strolling ahead, suddenly looked toward the south. At this moment he had regained his normal size and was no longer as skinny as a match. His eyes were still glowing with a green light, and his white hair danced in the wind. He looked like an evil demon walking in the boundless world. Such a majestic fate. Is it Zhou Xuanji or Yang Di? He mumbled to himself with a smile. His eyes were filled with a murderous look. When he absorbed the essence qi of Diablo and Fu Hao, he also absorbed their memories. He had a better understanding of the world and was no longer ignorant. He immediately turned around and walked toward the south. Initially he wanted to absorb the essence qi of all living beings in the north. But now he could not wait to absorb Zhou Xuanji and Yang Di's essence qi. Hundreds of thousands of miles away. Bai Hao Isin and Feng Qiul stood on a cliff. The 4 seasons were like spring behind them and the landscape was picturesque. The undulating ice mountains in front of them looked like another world. Since ancient times, the north has always been a place of suppression. Great Emperor, your divine weapon is in the north. Will it bump into Lu Wuji? Feng Qiu asked carefully. Ever since he knew that Lu Wuji had revived, he had been in fear. With Lu Wuji's power, he could kill whoever he wanted and no one could stop him. Bai Hao Yisan smiled condescendingly and said, Lu Wuji is nothing. When this emperor was at his peak, I was not any weaker than him. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 346. Seeing how confident Bai Hao Yisan was, Feng Qiu wanted to say something but hesitated. If you're so powerful, why were you forced to self-destruct so many times? Look at Lu Wuji. A single corpse could put the entire northern wilderness region in danger. Don't you know the difference between the two of you? Feng Qiu felt bitter in his heart, and he increasingly felt that he had fallen into a trap. Bai Hao Yisan flew forward and waved behind him, saying, Hurry up and follow me. Once I get my hands on the divine weapon, Lu Wuji will die regardless of how many tribulations he has. Feng Qiu sighed and could only follow. Heavenly Palace. The pale-faced Xin Yuanzhou sat on the throne. Ever since he had been killed by Shi Shenzong, he had only revived today. He was filled with rage and couldn't control it. Ever since he landed in the northern wilderness region, he had not had a good time. First, Zhou Xuanji had pretended to surrender, then he had been killed by Bai Hao Yisan's self-explosion, and then he had been killed by the Sword Saint. Looking back at the whole process, he was even more disheveled. What would happen next time? He felt that he had let down the heavens. However, the guilt could not compare to the anger in his heart. He wanted to kill Zhou Xuanji, Bai Hao Yisan, and the Sword Saint. At this moment, a bronze mirror at the side suddenly lit up. A blurry figure appeared in the mirror. Xin Yuanzhou, what are you doing? We still haven't received any karmic luck from you. A roar came out from the mirror, shaking the entire heavenly palace. Xin Yuanzhou hurriedly got up and knelt down. He gritted his teeth and recounted what had happened during this period of time. Trash. The person in the mirror cursed, wanting nothing more than to rush out and beat Xin Yuanzhou up. Xin Yuanzhou felt very wronged. The 2 people who killed him were both historical figures. Just wait, we will send another person to the mortal world to help you. After Shi Shenzong ascended, the higher realms were thrown into chaos, and everyone wanted to fight over him. The Hegemon Sword Emperor even joined hands with the other Sword Emperors to fight. The Heavenly Palace needs fate as well as younger power. The man in the mirror said in a deep voice before disappearing into the mirror. Xin Yuanzhou wasn't happy. Instead, he was even angrier. Bai Hao Yisan, I want you to die a horrible death. At this moment he did not seem like the heavens who had lost all his emotions. He was like a lion that was walking towards its end. A pillar of light appeared out of nowhere and shone on his body. The light dissipated. Xin Yuanzhou slowly rose to his feet, regaining his calm and emotionless demeanor. If the heavens want you to die, you have no choice but to die. The flow of fate continued for the time it took for an incense stick to burn. A 300-meter-tall fire qilin leaped out from the sea of clouds, scaring everyone into retreating. The fire qilin sprinted in the air, roaring excitedly as it resonated with Finyu Dragon King. I announced the establishment of the Emperor Sword Court. Zhou Xuanji loudly cried out, and all of Emperor Sword Court's disciples followed suit. They shouted themselves hoarse and all of them were so excited that their faces and necks were red. Fate connected into one, and Emperor Sword Court was officially born. If one person's luck soared to the heavens, the whole family would enjoy happiness and obtain good luck as well. If the Emperor Sword Court was heavily damaged, its fate would dissipate, and the fate of all the disciples in the court would also be damaged. Like birds of a feather. Today is not only the opening day of the Emperor Sword Court, but also the wedding day of me and my beloved wife Jiang Shui. Skyfall will host a banquet and invite all guests. In the following month, the Emperor Sword Court will be recruiting disciples. I will also make time to interact with the heroes of the world. Zhou Xuanji's voice sounded out again, making everyone excited. Those who wanted to join the sect would inevitably worry when they saw so many people. Those who wanted to befriend Zhou Xuanji would also have time to meet Zhou Xuanji. No matter what the outcome was, at least they did not come for nothing. Next, Zhou Xuanji landed in front of the mountain gate. Daoya old man waved his right hand, and red flowers appeared on the stone steps above him, extending into the clouds. Zhou Xuanji changed into a bright red dress, and Jiang Shui, who was wearing a wedding dress, appeared beside him with a red veil. Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Tsongjian, and the others followed behind them to protect them. Daoya old man stroked his long beard and smiled, looking pleased. He began to give a speech announcing to the heavens and gods. All living beings were witnesses to this marriage. No one jumped out to interrupt this marriage. Even if some people had other thoughts, they would not dare to do so at this moment. Jumping out in such a situation would only infuriate Zhou Xuanji. Anger could make people lose their rationality, but it could also make powerful people stronger. Zhou Xuanji took out the red embroidered ball, which was tied with a red cloth. He and Jiang Shui each held one end. "From today onwards you are my wife," Zhou Xuanji said softly with a smile. Under the red veil, Jiang Shui's lips curled up, and she felt sweet in her heart. After Daoya old man finished speaking, they began to climb the mountain. Holding Zhou Xuanji's hand, they ascended step by step. Ah! This day is finally here. Chongming Demon Monarch held his wine cup and laughed. He embraced the little black snake into his arms and strangled it with one arm, almost strangling it to death. A big and small air circled happily in the sky, flying together with Zhou Xiaoqi and Finyu Dragon King. Cheers resounded across the sky and it was extremely lively. Boom! 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 At the foot of the mountain the odd job disciples lit up fireworks. Dazzling fireworks bloomed in the sky. There were no fireworks in this world. Zhou Xuanji created them based on his memories from his previous life, just for this day. He walked step by step at a steady pace. With every step he took, scenes of memories surfaced in his mind. The confusion when he was born, the awkwardness and discomfort when his new mother doted on him, the heartache when Lady Zhao Xian threw him into the river, and so on. He was already 58 years old. On Earth he was considered old. But here his life truly began. He turned to look at Jiang Shui. Since he was 2 years old he had decided to protect her and it had never changed. But this promise became deeper. Deeper with happiness. From today onwards they would share blessings and misfortunes together. A smile appeared on his face and his fighting spirit was high. He would definitely make her the happiest woman in the world. In the north, amidst a world of ice and snow, Lu Wuji, who was strolling forward, stopped and looked ahead coldly. In front of him there were two people 100 meters away. It was Baihao Yisin and Feng Qiu. Feng Qiu said in a low voice, "This person is not simple. I cannot see through his cultivation, we must be careful." Baihao Yisin was expressionless as he said, "He is Lu Wuji. God damn it. Could their luck be any worse?" In this boundless world of ice and snow they had just entered and they had already bumped into Lu Wuji? At that moment he suddenly felt that the heavens were toying with him. What? Lu Wuji? Feng Qiu's expression greatly changed and terror descended upon him. Extreme fear flooded his heart like a tidal wave. The most powerful human in the legends? Your essence chi is very abundant. I'm going to kill you. Say your last words. Lu Wuji walked towards the two of them as he spoke. His voice clearly traveled into Baihao Yisin and Feng Qiu's ears. Feng Qiu's legs trembled as he asked, "Can we escape?" Baihao Yisin proudly laughed and stepped forwards as he said, "Escape? Why would this emperor escape?" His confidence gave Feng Qiu hope. Looking at his back, Feng Qiu felt that he was incredibly powerful and grand. Come. Miao Shu Wu. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.